adjourn, but to keep fidelity with our schedule, I'm going to call this very important council budget schedule into budget review and adoption schedule meeting. I'm looking at the wrong thing. This meeting to order, and then we're going to take a brief recess. Her Honor, I think it's about a few minutes out. So for purposes of the record, we are in session, and we will take a 5-minute break until the mayor gets here, and then we'll resume again. Thank you all for your patience. She's here. Morning, folks. Her Honor is in her chair. We're back in session. Madam Mayor, with your permission, we'll do the call to order. Well, it's already been called, the roll call, and then I'll turn it back over to you, ma'am. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Mayor O'Neill.
I am present,
Mayor Pro Tem Middleton.
I'm here.
Councilmember Caballero. Councilmember Freeman has a delayed arrival. Councilmember Halsey Hyman.
Present.
Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
And Councilmember Williams.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I yield back to the mayor.
Thank you all so much. We'll turn it over for our welcome. Chris Whittington, sorry. We'll turn it over to Christina, Chris, and Ho. Don't hold. Okay, thank you. All right, good morning, everybody. Those who are joining us here remotely as well as in person. We have a full 2 days of budget session, and we're going to turn it over to our interim director of budget and management services, Ms. Christina Riordan. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Christina Riordan, Budget and Management Services. And as Mayor said, I want to welcome you to our first of our 2-day work sessions. We have a full 2 days, and we are excited to be here and ready. We have staff ready to take your input. We'll be taking notes today to hear what you have to say. Just on the screen is our agenda for the day. If we need to take a break, we can. But the one thing I did want to say just before we get started, as we've said throughout the budget process, this has been a difficult budget season in the budget department, having lost our director. And so I just did want to take this time publicly to thank the budget staff for all the work that they did. It's an incredible group of people who would not have had a budget if it wasn't for them. And so I just wanted to take this moment before we started today to kind of acknowledge all the hard work that they did. They really got going when things got tough. And so I really wanted to thank them for all their work today. And then I'll I'm going to turn it over to our manager.
Good morning, everyone. Our staff here in the chamber, council members, and Mayor Pro Tem. We are, as Christina has said, we're here to provide additional information as we move through our budget adoption season. I'm going to be very brief this morning because we do have a packed agenda, but I did want to thank Christina for her leadership. She actually acknowledged the budget staff, but I thank them every time I get a chance, but certainly her leadership during this season. I would like to take one moment of introduction. We do have a new solid waste director who has joined us recently. His name is James Lyons, and I would like for him to stand up and be known to the public as well as to the elected officials and staff who have not met him yet. I'm sure he's going to be taking a lot of notes as he's the newest member of the leadership team.
Good morning. We'll turn it back to you.
Okay, and we will get started with an update on our strategic plan.
Good morning. My name is Shari Metcalfe. I'm from the budget department, and I am here today to give you a brief recap of our strategic plan refresh. But more excitedly, I'm more excited to talk about our new plan that I will go ahead and talk about as well today. It's my third time in front of you. The last 2 times I've been here, we've been giving updates on this refresh. So we'll keep that part of it short today. All right, so you've seen this before, you already know this, but quickly to review, our citywide strategic plan is a roadmap, tells us where we are now and where we want to go, helping us to organize our long-term vision into 3 to 5 year increments. It helps us also to communicate to our employees and to our residents about what our priorities are and what those measurable steps we are taking to move toward those desired outcomes, as well as connecting our limited resources with those long-term visions and priorities. So here you see our strategic plan begins with our mission and our vision. Those are approved by you all. and serve as our guiding posts. Each of our goal areas represent big priorities in the city. We have 5 main goals. They're very broad. And under each goal, there are 3 objectives or focus areas. And under each objective, we will have, we ended up having 2 to 4 initiatives, which are the actual activities, projects, and programs that we need to do to move the needle in each of these areas. So mission, vision, goals, objectives, initiatives. And this timeline is something you've seen before, but we are very happy to report that we are right on track. We last spoke to you all in March at the budget retreat when we were beginning the process of our initiative development. And now we are back in front of you all to report out that the final plan is here. We hope you all will adopt along with the budget in June. And then of course, work definitely does not stop there. The all-important implementation will start almost immediately, as well as going back to our employees and our community members to share that new plan. So to provide a quick recap of the refresh process before I go into the new plan, in the fall, so fall of 2022, we met with department leadership to talk about our goal areas, better define them, and do an environmental scan. We had a lot of changes in the last few years. We wanted to make sure that those were well represented in our new plan. The goal of those meetings were to brainstorm the key focus areas or objectives that we then brought to our residents and employees to help us prioritize. We are excited to share that we received feedback from over 500 employees on potential objectives for our innovative and high-performing organization goal. That's more of our internal services goal. We were able to gather 876 resident surveys through the use of both focused community outreach and the resident satisfaction survey. So residents were given a list of 5 to 7 potential objectives per goal, and they were then asked to pick their top 3 priorities for each goal. The results were then shared with the executive leadership, who finalized the top 3 objectives. And we're really excited and proud that the top 2 to 3 priorities from our engagement efforts are directly reflected in our plan as objectives. So initiative development. In early spring, we met with initiative teams, and these teams were chosen by department directors for being the subject matter experts in each of these areas. The initiatives are really the substance of the plan because they're the actual programs, projects, and actions that help us meet our objectives in order to achieve our goals. So we began by asking initiative teams to dream big, what the city could accomplish in the next 3 to 5 years. And we ended each of those meetings with a list of draft initiatives. Many of these initiatives came from action items of existing long-term plans, such as the draft comprehensive plan, small business plan, and the carbon neutrality and renewable energy plan. We wanted to use those existing plans whenever possible because of so much of the hard work and the intensive engagement that had gone into developing them. So initiative teams took their list of draft initiatives and answered some questions related to potential resource needs, key deliverables, milestones, the impact it would have on the objective area, potential equitable impacts of who does it serve, who does it benefit, who does it not benefit. And then that information was used to plot out initiatives on an effort impact matrix, which you can see on this slide here, to visualize the impact initiatives might have on the community and the city and the resources that they would require. So department leadership met to review the matrix and determine which initiatives should not move forward. Most, if not all, the initiatives that did not move forward are items that are still going to happen. They're just going to be with departments specifically and not in the strategic plan. Executive leadership reviewed the final proposed initiatives to ensure alignment with citywide goals and council priorities. All right, so next to the good part. At the end of all those meetings and surveys, discussions, and in some cases, lively debates, we have our FY24 to FY26 strategic plan. 5 goals, each goal has 3 objectives for a total of 15 strategic objectives, and we stuck to our original plan of having fewer initiatives to focus on. We had over 100 initiatives in our last full plan. And during implementation, so why we ended up with 41 this go around, and why is that lower number so important to us? During implementation, we look at these initiatives frequently and in detail. So having 100 initiatives makes that very, very difficult. So while there are obviously, and this is really important, there are far more than 41 activities happening in the city around these 5 goals, that magic number of 41 is where we're going to really focus closely in the next few years and really work to communicate that progress out to our residents. We're also going to be looking at measures and data around those initiatives, and I'll talk more about that at the end. All right, so I'm going to go through each of our 5 goals. I'm not going to read all 41 initiatives for you all. We have a full report available online. It's also in our proposed budget book. But I will highlight some initiatives as we go through. Keep in mind, these are still going through quite a bit of the detailed work. So if you have a specific question about them, I may have to get back to you, just because lots of conversations around those initiatives, including milestones and deliverables and important conversations about resources, are all happening in the next few months as we further develop this out. So we'll start with goal 1, our shared economic prosperity. We have 3 objectives: providing tools and resources to promote small businesses, building a talented, competitive workforce, and building connections between job seekers and quality job opportunities. I do want to highlight that as part of the city manager's budget proposal, there's new funding available for the Youth Works program. That's in objective 1.2 at the bottom: expand the Youth Works program to better align with the talent pipeline for business needs. That's a big project for OEWD. Excited to see what that will look like in the next few years and how that grows out. Goal 2, our safer community together. We have our 3 objectives of reducing harm, building trust between our neighbors and public safety providers. And an objective that has not been part of this specific goal in the past, an objective related to the recruitment, retention, and support of our public safety employees. I do want to highlight initiative 2.11. That's the first initiative under reduce harm. This initiative is such a great example of collaborative, departments working together. It touches so many of our departments to reduce the public safety interactions with and improve outcomes for familiar neighbors. In discussions with our public safety departments, every one of them, from 911, fire, community safety, and police, they all have familiar neighbors. These are residents that they interact with frequently. This initiative is aimed at using a data-driven approach to identify neighbors with the highest number of interactions with each of these groups, and to develop strategies and collaborative partnerships to better address the needs for these neighbors, resulting, hopefully, right, in a measurable reduction in the number of times these neighbors engage with our public safety staff. Goal 3, connected, engaged, and inclusive communities. Our 3 objectives there: elevating our community voices in local government and decision-making, making housing more affordable, and expanding resident access to digital resources and community programs. So this, I'd like to highlight the initiative under objective 3.3, create and implement a digital inclusion roadmap, which strives to ensure that every resident of Durham is provided with access to or use of digital tools and services, regardless of their background. A digital inclusion manager is in the process of being filled right now in the Technology Solutions Department, who will be focused on this work around this initiative. Goal number 4, innovative and high-performing organization. This is our internal-facing goal. We have our recruit, retain, and advance a diverse and engaged workforce. Second one is embedding equitable consideration into programs, policies, and culture. And the third, strengthen interdepartmental collaboration and communication. This one I want to focus on all the initiatives under objective 4.1. It's no surprise that across the nation, right, we have some hiring issues. We also have some vacancy. So all 3 of these initiatives are all around focusing on recruitment and retention strategies. These strategies that can expand the hiring pool, increase hiring efficiency, and the speed in which we hire, as well as lower the turnover rate. And our last goal, poor goal 5 is always last, but definitely not least, our thriving and vibrant environment. These 3 objectives are advancing our carbon neutrality through the maintenance and improvement of existing infrastructure, supporting community-wide renewable energy and energy efficiency strategies, and our 5.3 objectives, very specific to our solid waste department, focused on diverting waste through alternate and innovative strategies. Not to say that solid waste works in a bubble. They obviously partner with multiple departments, but they will be heavily focused in this objective. This goal is a really good example of how we looked at current long-term plans to build it out. Objective 5.1, all 3 of those initiatives come directly from our carbon neutrality plan. Objective 5.2, they both come from our draft comprehensive plan, and even parts of 5.3 are also from that comprehensive plan as well. So really, excuse me, I don't know if I'm talking very fast, but I'm out of breath. All right, so what's next? I'm almost at the end. The all-important what's next. So as I've mentioned multiple times before in past presentations and in this one, the actual refresh process is a very small part of the strategic plan. It is really all about the implementation. City of Durham has a living, dynamic strategic plan. It is not a dusty binder on a shelf somewhere. And implementation will start with fully building out our initiatives. So working with our initiative teams to complete a timeline, a detailed work plan, we talk about milestones, we create the very important performance measures so we can track our progress. We have conversations about resource needs and how those resources may or may not impact that timeline and those milestones. All of those conversations and work will occur in the next few months. Simultaneously, we're also working to build out our new resident-facing dashboard. Once we have our initiatives fully developed, we put those into our dashboard. And once the dashboard is complete, with the help of our communications department, we'll launch an awareness campaign to get the word out to our community members so they can go to that dashboard, read more about our initiatives, learn more about what we're trying to achieve through those initiatives, and also see the measures where they can track progress moving forward. And we'll be updating those posters in the back, all important, having that done this summer. But back to you for your signatures later. And the last part of this is the ongoing tracking and reporting of progress. So back in March, I spoke about our Durham strategy and performance meetings. We refer to them as DSAP internally. So DSAP will start back out again in the fall and will continue through the lifespan of this plan. So DSAP again is an opportunity for initiative teams to get in front of the city manager and city leadership, to talk about what they've been working on, highlight any of their programs, and then they talk about what they hope to accomplish, what they hope to get done in the next 3 to 6 months. It's also a time where if there's any issues, roadblocks that they come across, they can come out and discuss that, try to find a resolution. So we consider DSAP as probably a key part of the implementation of our plan. And I will end with this slide. This link will take you to our strategic plan webpage. It's not a dashboard yet, but you can go there and see our full report that has a listing of our goals and our objectives and initiatives, as well as some older reports and lots of other information. And with that, I will thank you for your time this morning and open it up to any questions. And again, if I can't answer something specific, I certainly can get back to you all.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good morning again. Good morning, everyone in the room. Good to see you. It's been a minute to see you in person. I've been practicing my signature for the new posters. So very quickly, the 41 initiatives as opposed to 100, but you said that others will still be going on in addition to 41. So what will differentiate the 41 from the other ones? Will we just be drilled down more in terms of metrics and tracking how they're going, while the other ones, what will separate those 41 from the other 100?
So those 41 is what we will be focusing in on the DSAP meeting, so we'll be hearing about them more often, but for our residents, those 41 are what we'll be putting in our dashboard, and that dashboard will have, you know, what it is, what the milestones are, health measures related to them. So we're trying to build almost like a story about that initiative for people to come in and see more information. So it's really about how we communicate to our residents about, we're doing a lot more, but that 41 is where we're gonna really hone in.
Excellent. So for the resident to interact with that dashboard and then see me on the street and say, it's fair for me to say, but we're doing more than that in addition to those. All right.
Absolutely.
Okay. Excellent report. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And I will just add that our departments also have strategic plans. So in addition to the enterprise-wide strategic plan, our departments have strategic plans, they have work plans. So that's where you find the other work.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Any other questions?
Hi, good morning. Hi, I think it might fall under goal 4, objective 4.2, but my question, oh, am I wrong? Oh, sorry. My question is, you know, when people leave the city, I'm assuming that they have exit interviews. So just wondering where that data that you compile when they have the exit interviews, how is that going to be looked at in terms of trying to fall? I guess it would fall under 4.2.
I think 4.1,
Okay.
and I know they do exit interviews. I don't know, would you want to respond or?
Good morning,
Good morning.
Robin Wynn, HR Director. In response to your question, we do collect exit data and it would be tracked under 4.1, I believe. And that data will be available. We're actually working on Assistant Director Scott and I are working on a dashboard so that we can report out on those things. So that we can report out on those things.
Thank you.
Hopefully I answered your question.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great job.
Good morning. Christina Riordan, Budget and Management Services, and I am up for the next presentation to talk about revenues today, so in our proposed budget. So we will be talking about revenues, but the revenues I will be primarily focusing on is our general fund revenues, which, as you all know, our general fund is where most of our departments sit. And so when we talk about revenues for our general fund, there are kind of two main revenue sources that we focus on. And that's because they make up the primary amount of revenue in the general fund. And that's property tax, which is at 47% of general fund revenue, and sales tax, which makes up another 35% of our general fund revenue. We will also talk a little bit about our tax rate, our property tax rate. As you all are aware, the proposed budget that you have before you now has no proposed tax rate for FY24, but we will go over kind of what the tax rate is. And then also, I'll talk a little bit about sales tax projections, and also our fund balance. So getting started, this chart here shows you our major revenue sources in the general fund, and kind of giving you a snapshot of what our adopted budget for this fiscal year, where we project to be at the end of the year, and then what our proposed budget is for FY24. For our property tax, we have kind of a 4.25% increase, which is $5.5 million. Sales tax is a 15.1% increase we're proposing for FY24, which is $13.1 million. And then occupancy tax is a 3% increase. That is a revenue source that has kind of rebounded since the pandemic. And also our Powell bill, which is a state formula that we receive from the states. We don't have that much control over it, but we've had 2 strong years of Powell bill funding. And so we are anticipating that that will come in at 7.3. The next is our general fund revenue summary, which is this chart shows you budget to budget over the last several years. We have some of our major revenue sources in the general fund. Looking at the first one, property tax and sales tax, which we will talk a little bit more about. Other local taxes, the majority of that is our occupancy tax. State shared revenue is some of the revenue sources we receive from the state, which we have, as we've talked about, come as formulas. The majority of that being our Powell bill. There's some licenses and permits that also show up in our general fund, and charges for services. That revenue source is mainly our Parks and Rec and Parks and Rec and planning fees. Sorry, so that's showing up in there. Okay. Moving on to the next slide is our general fund revenue summary. This is showing you kind of a breakdown of the general fund revenue, which we've talked about already, kind of giving you a visual of how important the property tax and our other local tax, which the majority of that is sales tax, makes up, how those 2 revenue sources make up a majority of our general fund revenue. Looking at our property tax rate allocation, as I've talked about already, we are not proposing a property tax increase for FY24, but I do like to point out with this slide that there are several funds that do receive a portion of our property tax. Our general fund receives the largest portion at 31.55 cents, but then some of the other funds that receive property tax are debt, housing, transit, and solid waste. So that our 55.77 cents is what it would mean for the average homeowner. If we look at the Durham County Tax Office, the average or the median home value is $244,538. That would be a tax bill of $1,363, or about $114 per month. And just to note some of the the property tax growth overall from 23, just the natural growth from 23 to 24, budget is about $9.4 million in all funds. Okay, the next is our kind of a visual of our property tax tax-based growth. This is showing you assessed value, breaking out assessed value by real, personal, and motor vehicle. As we talked about, the proposed rate is 55.77 cents for next year. Our real property growth is 3.6%, motor vehicle growth at 3%, and the overall growth at 4.25%. The next chart is just kind of showing you how we kind of get to our property tax projection. The first set of numbers you see at the top are our assessed value broken out by the different categories: real property, personal property, motor vehicle, and public utilities, with real property obviously making up the majority of assessed value. Then we have our tax rate for our different funds. We do account for some uncollected taxes. We have a very strong collection rate in Durham County, and so our collection rate that we are projecting for next year is 99.5%. And then this breaks out what is appropriated to each of the different funds. And that final number is, which we focus a lot on, is the 1 cent equals. That really is telling you what 1 cent of the property tax, what 1 cent of property tax generates as far as revenue. So it would generate $4.1 million. Another look at property tax allocation. You can see here, this breaks out the different property tax allocation in the different funds. The difference in this chart is you'll see that we have accounted for our tax collection fee that we pay to Durham County. They collect taxes on our behalf, and so there is a net revenue that we, after the tax collection fee is taken out. I think the thing that I would point out is, which I've kind of stated already, is the general fund is the fund that receives the largest portion of our tax revenue, followed by our debt fund, solid waste, transit, and housing. There is a column in the chart here showing you the BID, which is our business improvement district. That is a separate tax, a 7 cent tax on our downtown area, and that is also included in the information in this. And there is no proposed tax increase for that tax rate. The next is showing you our property tax budget to actual. This chart shows you the blue is showing you the budget, red is our actual at the end of the year, and then we also have a green chart, which are our projection for this year. As you can see, for the last several years, our actuals have exceeded our budget. This year, we are anticipating, which you heard at our Q3 report last week, that we are expecting to come in budget or at budget for FY23. And then FY24, you can see the budget, which we have talked about. And then also, the one thing I will point out is that there is a reval expected from, we have heard from our Durham County Tax Office that the reval will be January 1st, 2025. So moving on to sales tax. Sales tax is doing well. It is up almost 5.5% from where we were last year at this time. Sales tax is on a slight delay, which we've talked about in the past, but we are seeing higher collections than we did at this same time last year. We are expecting our EOY projection at the end of the year to be $97.5 million, which is 12.3% over last year's, which is higher than budget, about $10.7 million. And our budget, just to remind you, for this fiscal year is $86.8 million. So for next year, we are projecting our sales tax at $99.9 million, which is a 15.1% increase, which generates $13.1 million more. That does seem like a very large increase, but I want to remind you of where we think we're going to end the year. So although it's 15.1% more than our budget of $86.8 million, it is only about a 3% increase over where we believe that we will end this fiscal year. We've just seen, tremendous growth in sales tax, and I think we probably under budgeted during some of the pandemic years, and so we're kind of correcting for that with this budget. We do, as a reminder, have an ILA with Durham County, which has been renewed by the council and will continue for FY24. Again, just showing you a chart with some of the sales tax growth. Similar to the chart you saw for property tax, blue is budget, red is actuals, and of course, the green is EOI. Like I said, sales tax is on a delay, which is why the actuals for FY23 look lower. And also, there is a spike in FY 2014-15. That spike has to do with the way that sales tax for our gas and electric was collected. It became part of our sales tax, so it wasn't necessarily an increase in revenue in those years. It was just kind of a change in revenue sources, the way we calculate revenue sources. The next is our other general fund revenue sources, which you had seen some of this information, especially the EOY projections, are the Q3 projections that you saw last week. This looks at adopted, year-to-date, and then our proposed. Utility tax, which is our video franchise and telecommunications tax, has been trending down. And so as you heard at our Q3 last week report from our finance director, we have kind of corrected for that for next year. Occupancy tax is doing well, and so we have a 3% increase in the budget for next fiscal year. Powell bill, we've spent some time talking about. And then charges for services, we are expecting that our proposed budget for FY24 is similar to our budget for FY23. We're not seeing much growth in that. So moving on to our fund balance, and we did have a little bit of a look at this last week when we had the Q3 report. But at the end of Q3, we are projecting that there will be $73.3 million in fund balance. And reminding you of two of the markers that we used, 16.7%. If you 16.7% of that fund balance is $42.7 million. 12% is $30.7 million. And then the surplus above the 16.7 million is 34.2 million. And so in this budget that we have proposed, we are projecting to use 13.8 million, which if you minus 34 from the 13.8, there would still be $20.4 million remaining of fund balance. And as a reminder, some of the things that we are proposing to use fund balance for is $4 million for street maintenance, around $600,000 for our election costs, $500,000 for land acquisition for open space and trails, $5.4 million to cover one-time funding of departmental items, and $3.3 million for one-time CIP funding, or CIP projects. This is our multi-year, which you have seen in the past. And what I will point out is that this is a very important internal tool that we use. It is something that we are constantly looking at. There are deficits that you will see in the years past FY24. And this is similar to what you saw last year at this time. One of the things that we are doing in this model is to be kind of conservative. So our revenue estimates are conservative at this point, since we don't have a lot of information, and we kind of adjust them as we get more information. And then I think the main driver of kind of the expenses in this model are our personnel services. You know, kind of salaries and benefits are a main driver of some of those, some of the increases that you're seeing in this model. And then finally, just to talk about priorities for FY24, I think these are similar to some of the priorities we've had in the past. We are constantly monitoring revenues and expenditures, and of course, we provide you with a quarterly update on those, and we amend the budget as needed throughout the year. We'll continue to refine that multi-year financial plan that you just saw, and we come before you and bring it to you at mid-year during our budget retreats, and we're also working with the city manager, updating her on that several times a year. So that's something that we continue to look at as we get better information. And then we're also continuing to develop strategies to address any of those multi-year gaps that you see, and also, especially with our new strategic plan, looking to how we can fund those strategic plan priorities. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, questions? All right, seeing none, fine job. Thank you so much.
So much. And I'm going to, our next presentation, I'm going to turn it over to our Human Resources Director, Robin.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good
Good morning, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, and City Manager Page. My name is Marvin, and I'm Director of Human Resources. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. This is my first time, so be gentle. This year, I have my colleagues with me, Don Scott, Assistant HR Director, and Joyce Baker, Interim Assistant HR Director, to assist with questions if needed. Before getting started, I would like to thank Mr. Scott, Ms. Baker, and Matthew Greenhall, who's also on our team, for their tireless work on this presentation. Greatly appreciated. Next slide, please. My objective is to give you an overview of the compensation recommendations and the benefit changes submitted for consideration, and these are the topics I will be discussing this morning. Next slide. So we'll get started. Pay for performance recommendation. It is recommended that the pay for performance program be fully funded. The amount listed here are derived from the city's multi-year financial plan that Christina just spoke about, and represents the salary-only cost to fully implement the plan for general fund employees. Next slide. Here you will see our recommendation on the Durham minimum living wage, livable wage, or DMLW, which is how we refer to it. The DMLW will increase by 4.9% for FY24. This is an increase over the year before. Last FY23 was $17.60, but it will be adjusted to $18.46. Those employees or those jobs that fall below the DMLW will be adjusted to that particular rate of $18.46. Next, we'll talk about compensation recommendations. When we make recommendations, we do so with considerations in mind. We had 5 considerations this year, and the first one was certainly to maintain the integrity of our current plans. The second one was to respond to market conditions and shifts. Recently, the North Carolina League of Municipalities released a statewide salary survey. And in that survey, it talks about municipalities are planning to offer increases between 5% and 18%, and that would include merit and structure. The largest cities in North Carolina are reporting a range of 4.7% to 11%, which is averaging out to about 6.2%. And I'll talk a little bit more about what we are proposing in the next couple of slides. On number 3, certainly to talk about our recommendations are to support the DMLW. Number 4, strengthen efforts to reduce turnover and to fill vacancies. I am, as of Monday, May the 22nd, citywide turnover is at 14.9%, up slightly from last quarter of 14.3%, but still down from the recent peak of 16.5% in December of 2022. Most of our turnover is voluntary, which accounts for 9.7%. However, I am pleased to report that the total number of vacant positions are down to 451 from a recent high of 511. The vacancy rate still stands at 16.3%. And then lastly, we certainly want to address recent changes in the economy with our recommendations, and I'll talk more about that as we continue. Next slide. HR recommended a 2% increase to all pay plans and salaries in the open range, with a total, and from this slide you'll see, with a total plan cost of $4.6 million to alleviate, and that 2% was recommended to help alleviate some of the market pressures that we're facing, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. As I said before, any employee that falls below our DMLW would be adjusted to that 1846 that I mentioned earlier.
Next slide.
This slide just illustrates when an employee could see potential changes in their paycheck. These are the dates. The way it worked, we would have the salary structure adjustment effective July 1st, and that would be reflected on the 7/14 paycheck. And then the pay for performance would be effective July 15th, and the employee could see that on their 7/28 paycheck. And then we also have internal reclassifications that would be reflected on the 8/11 paycheck. Next slide. Also want to talk, just share with you, the mayor mentioned an end of year appreciation bonus in April. We have put that together. The cost of that is $735,000, and we scheduled it to be awarded to employees on November 17th. They would see it in their November 17th paycheck. And we recommended that it was for all employees hired prior to July 1st of 2023. Next. In FY24, we are recommending a class and compensation study to be done, and we are asking for that to include general employees, police, and fire. This comprehensive study is more than just a salary survey. It's done we want to take a look at our current position and market. And we also we have some goals associated with our class and comp study. Certainly, we want to address recruitment and retention challenges that we faced. We also would like to ensure our market and internal structure alignment. Then we also would like to simplify classification structures where that's possible. And one of the things, some of the feedback that we heard is around career progression. So we want to look at it relative to that. And then also we would like to look at it and use our class and comp survey to review minimum qualifications to facilitate recruitment of talent. The HR department recommended the completion of a class and comp study in FY24 because best practices suggest that comp studies are typically done every 3 to 5 years to maintain structure, competitiveness, and effectiveness. The last study here for the city was completed in 2019. In light of the pay challenges and hard to fill positions and attracting and retaining talent, HR is recommending a more comprehensive, more detailed approach to our class and comp study, unlike what we did in 2019. And so I want to kind of just spend a few minutes talking about the why. Next slide, please. So attracting talent continues to be a challenge for many employers, as you all know. And today we're seeing candidates ask for flexible work agreements or arrangements and higher starting salaries. While we do our best to accommodate that, we do understand that has an impact. And doing the study helps us to better understand that and understand our position relative to the market. Adjusting the market rate, HR's recommendation also will address some of the challenges around step plans and market rates. We want to look at how our step plan is laid out and understand what it looks like compared to the rest of the market. And it's our hope that by doing that, the market, we will be able to better retain skilled and experienced staff. The 2018-2019 study that I just referenced recommended annual structure adjustments for the city to do a follow-up study in FY24. However, since the pandemic, everything's pretty much changed. So that's why we are asking to do something that's a little bit more comprehensive, so that we can address some of those major labor challenges, and then also to address some of the challenges that we've had around attracting CDL drivers and trade and inspection positions as well. That's been one of our biggest challenges. During the past year, we've also consulted with the directors, and it's become apparent that some of our jobs have changed. And so what we also want to do with this class and comp study is to evaluate those changes to determine where we need to make changes in jobs and position rates. Durham's growth and development is happening quickly, and we want to make sure that we're responsive to that evolving to the city's evolution. And then lastly, market competition, as you all know, continues to be high. We will rely on our consultant to identify and recommend strategies and current base compensation practices, such as retention bonuses, certification incentives, and pay equity adjustments to address recruitment and retention, in the hopes that we are being competitive in the market. Next slide, please. Next slide, thank you. Moving on, initially HR was asked to develop a cost estimate on moving employees into steps had the city not frozen pay in FY '21 and '22. The scope was expanded to include an analysis of all employees affected during that same period. Next slide. So before we started pulling that data, we created some basic assumptions as we were looking at that information, and on the screen you will see those. But this just illustrates what we use when we were retrieving, analyzing, and calculating those costs to present today. Next slide. So our methodology was to calculate estimated costs. We applied the same treatment to all employees who would have been eligible. And then we applied the following percentages for each of those pay plans, as you see on the screen. Next slide. This is a summary slide on our findings. From this slide, you will see that, excuse me, from the summary slide, you will see that total cost would be $16.9 million to make that change. It does not reflect any impact on the FY '24 recommendations that we made earlier. It is just to kind of point out, the grand total for estimated costs for FY '21 would have been 7.9. Estimated costs for '22 would be 8.9, and that's how we, and adding those two numbers, that's how we arrived at 16.9. Next slide. There are additional considerations as you think through next steps. This information is preliminary analysis. The HR team would have to complete an in-depth analysis of each employee's pay history to determine what that would look like. And then certainly there's what we call the ripple effect. We would have to look at whether or not by making any changes would have any impact on compression issues that would require an additional equity adjustment. And again, we do have a comprehensive pay study in this budget, and the study we hope will analyze structures, step structures, employee placement, and market positions. So those are additional considerations. The next slides are slides that we put together just to serve as, to show a couple of examples and how pay has been affected from FY 2019 to FY '23. Next slide. Print's a little small, but hopefully you can see this. So this is for fire. We selected a fire recruit hired on April the 8th of 2019 with a tenure of 4.1 years. So this person would start out at base pay at $34,000. And then over a 5-year period, this person is now at $45,115. We did have some changes, and those changes were reflected or were a result of the step plan itself moving. Although merits were not given that year, step plans were actually, step adjustments were given. And the same is true for like a fire captain. And these are just examples of actual employees. And on the next couple of slides, you'll see the same thing. So here in police, you will see that this person, the first person, the police recruit, started on April the 23rd. I want to say that's probably 2018, I'm sorry, it looks like it dropped down. and the tenure for that person is 4.82 years. They started out at $37,000, and their current rate is $49,300, which is over time, that's an increase of about 33%. Same with the sergeant, which is right around 31%. Next slide. We also looked at it for employees on general step. As you see here, this entry-level position person started on November the 5th of 2018 with a tenure of about 4.5 years. So this person started at 35. Over the course of time, they got a 13.6% increase from start date to now. So that's about a 13.6% increase, or $4,794. For mid-level, same thing. Next slide. And then on open range, we also provide an example where the person started at 55,000 and then went to 63 this year, 63,706, which is about a 15.8% increase over time. These are just examples that we wanted to share with you so that you would have a sense of what has changed or what has happened over that period of time. Okay, so now we're into benefits and wellness. Next slide. The city has finalized the health and dental rates for 2024 in collaboration with our broker, Independent Benefits Advisors, or IBA. The city has proposed a 3.3% increase in plan rates. And doing my research, many organizations were experiencing a 6.5% increase, and we came in at an average of a 3.3% increase, which is actually very good. And the way we have applied those increases are over 2 different plans and have been applied differently. For those employees in the Whole Health Plus plan, it's an increase of about 5%, and for those that are in the Whole Health Low plan, it's about a 2% increase. Those, based on our current numbers, our current enrollment, the overall increase would average out to about a 3.3% increase. From the comparison slide, you will see the most significant increase amount is at $19.94, which is tier 3 for family. The highest cost, that is the highest increase amount for our employees as well as our retirees. And we are also not recommending any changes to premium or our cost on our on our dental plan. The city of Durham does have a wellness initiative, and in 2022, the city started out or implemented a hybrid wellness program design. The program required employees to complete 1 mandatory wellness activity, and then they needed to work through a point system in order to get to 200 or to earn 240 points. We got feedback from the employees that they were not, that was not one of their favorites. So we certainly made a change in our plan this year. Our employees asked us to bring back our biometric screening, which was done in previous years. So we have since brought that back with on-site clinics. And then employees can also complete their biometric screening both in a physician's office and a patient service centers. And then also, instead of them now having to complete city-sponsored events to earn 240 points, they can complete 3 additional activities of their choosing, as long as they're wellness related, and we do have a list for employees to select from. And then they would qualify for the wellness insurance premium for 2025, not 20, because you actually do the activities on 1 year to earn for the following year. So this is all effective this is already effective. We did maintain the discount of $20 per month, but we are looking at that because that was one of the other things that employees asked us to take a look at. It is our hope, go back. It is our hope that by the time with these new changes that we will see an increase in participation, in wellness plan participation. And then lastly, which employees have been notified of this, but the federal government ended the COVID emergency declaration on May the 11th of 2023. And in support of that, we recommended removing the COVID surcharge, and that has been approved. This concludes my presentation. I hope that you found this information helpful and I did not go too fast. And we thank you for the opportunity to come before you today. Are there any questions I can possibly answer? If I cannot, we will certainly get back to you as quickly as we can.
Well done for your first time.
Thank you.
Well done. Made it through. Made it through. Turn it over to my colleagues to see if y'all have any questions for Ms. Wynn. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Congratulations, great presentation as well. Yes, ma'am. So there's a lot going on here, and it's important that I'm glad you put some things out in the atmosphere, because the actual nuts and bolts of this, require putting some things in context. And I think you've given us a great amount of on-ramps. First of all, so I voted on the 2019 plan after we did the comp study, and you said that this next one would be more comprehensive, and I don't want residents or citizens. I mean, I could see some people hearing that and maybe deducing that perhaps there were some things deficient about the previous study, that we didn't go as deep as we could have. So just for trying to set the tone, what are we going to be asking this time that we didn't ask last time? What's going to make this more robust?
So I was not here the last time, but what I can tell you about this plan, we do plan to look at equity. We look initially, I guess we did a cross section of certain positions. We are going to look at more positions than what we looked at before, which is typical in a comprehensive study. We just know that we need to look at more positions, just based on feedback and what we're getting from new hires when they apply, when they want to negotiate rates. So we plan to do that. Certainly we want to look at equity, and equity in terms of female versus male, how people are paid, to make sure that there's a balance there. We also want to take a look at what are best practices, what are other organizations doing that at that time in 2019 you may not need it to do. But now, do we need to look at sign-on bonuses, and if so, to what extent? Do we need to take a look at CDL incentives? Back in 2019, there wasn't a shortage of CDL drivers, but now there is. So what do we need to do to attract those people here for the city? So we're going to rely on our consultant to help us really dig deep on some of those things that have been what I call post-COVID impacts to our compensation design that you didn't have to do before.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about compression vis-a-vis a pay plan that's market-based as opposed to service-based. Because one of the things that we've heard is that there's concern with some employees that a new employee's salary is too close to someone that's been here a number of years. But when you're trying to be, if you're doing market-based hiring, the quote-unquote value of that job is based upon current market conditions. And what an engineer may have been making 5 years ago to start has changed now. So if we say we want to be competitive and bring folk in, we have to pay them competitive salaries. The challenge is that a competitive salary for the same job may be closer to what you're making now, having been there 5 to 6 years. So how do we tell a new employee, we're going to take you back to what your job would have gotten 5 years ago? They're going to say, well, I'll go to somebody who's going to pay the market base. So say a little bit about how market-based hiring as opposed to experience-based or time-based hiring factors into this compression conversation.
So I will use.
Okay, I found this on the web for factors.
I think think Siri's gonna
Yeah.
answer.
I'm afraid what she might say.
Let's hear what she has to say. Okay, let me regroup. So in your example, you mentioned engineers. Engineers are on our open range plan. And oftentimes, and I'll stick with them, you're right, things have changed from a market because of demand. And that demand has come because you see less people going into an engineering career or taking those college courses or graduating. And that's where the shortage is coming from, because we're not getting enough people to graduate with engineering degrees. So what does that mean for us? So that means that we do, from a market perspective, you're absolutely correct. We do have to look at what the market bears and our needs around what we're going to pay, what's an acceptable pay. But when we do our comp study, we also look at, we are evaluating ourselves against other municipalities to determine how they pay that position, because clearly we don't want to outprice ourselves in terms of that. And then we also will look at internal equity, and that's, I think I referenced that there may be a need to create other equity, we may have to do other equity adjustments. That will depend largely on our guidance, that will depend solely on our direction from our city manager on how she would like us to address those things. But in terms of market hiring, yes, you are correct. We do look at what's happening within the market and how that position is going to be paid. Because quite honestly, if we say we're not going to pay that person, what they're asking for, or, something that's comparable into our structures, then they will pursue opportunities elsewhere.
Right, and that's part of the dilemma as a decision maker. When I even look at police and firefighters, if we pay a police officer, or firefighter, or whomever, a bunch more money to attract them at the initial stage, and it resembles what someone who's been here for a number of years, then we have internal pushback from folk who have been here. But we then also have these market forces that if we're going to get these people, we have to do, and part of my work with the league, I talk to folk all over the state all the time. And one of the things I hear about Durham is you'll hear folks say, well, this city may pay more. But one of the things I hear consistently about Durham is that our benefits are almost unmatched in Durham. And a lot of folk want to work in Durham. They'll look at salary, but when you look at your kid going to the dentist or going to the doctor, that factors in as well. So we need to know that Durham is an incredible place to work. And I hear this all over the state when it comes to benefits as well. So I think that's important when we think about this huge sucking sound of people leaving Durham. A lot of people who stay in Durham because of our benefits, and that adds up as well. I want to talk a little bit about the line that went across the bottom, because the lump sum payments that we've done, and also how the step. Yes, please, can you go back? How the step plan, you made a comment, and I think it's important that we drill down a little bit on it.
Is that what you're talking about?
The one-time pays across the bottom.
Yes.
That, because we didn't really talk about, we talked about the step plan, but not the money that we've paid in lump sum over the years as well being added to salary. And also, I think it's important that you say a little more about what does it mean that the step has changed as opposed to a person leaving the step, because in some instances, the step itself was made more robust. So you didn't go up a step, but the step became more valuable.
Correct.
So, and that's a part of the discussion that was not, as we drill out and make decisions, I think so say a little bit more about that, what that means.
So our recommendation is a 2% increase on the step. So what that means is that current value of that step would be increased by 2%. So people that are currently on that step would get that 2%. And that 2% is now that new value for that particular step, okay? So whenever we talk about market, when you hear me say market or step, we're talking about that relative, I'm so sorry. We're talking about it relative to the step plan. The other piece of it, when we talked about pay for performance is the merit piece. So you have 2% step, and then you could earn up to 6% on your merit. So adding those two things together, you could go anywhere from 6% to 8% for your total increase. For these examples, can you go back, please? For these examples, in 2020, and I'm going to defer to city manager here, but in 2022, There were no step adjustments. I'm sorry, in 2022, there was no merit, but there was a step adjustment. Is that correct, Madam Mayor? I mean, Madam City Manager. And so that's what happened. So on this particular slide, looking at the fire recruit, the dollar change that you see at that $6,868 could be a step adjustment. Is that correct? And the additional money.
Yes. So what you're seeing in these examples, they're actual pay changes that have been added to base. So those, when you're looking at the dollar amount and the percentage change, all of those increases were added to base. I think your first question was about the banner below, which is one-time payments. We wanted to show that as information in this presentation, but those totals were bonuses and they were not added to base. But what you see in the main table, those are beginning salaries. They are salary changes that have been added to base pay in all of these pay examples. And it is an accumulation of the dollar amount that has changed along with the percentage change over the time frame that is showing in the table. So connecting it specifically to two steps. You know, a step is really just a percentage increase in pay. So for us as a city government, we have two of our pay plans that do have steps that are at 5%, and that is in our fire and our police pay plan. And our general employee pay plan, those steps are 4%. So in any given year, if a step is taken and that step plan is active, then it generates that increase to base. So what we have heard is that in 2021 and in 2022, those steps or those increases that would have been applicable to those steps, 4% or 5% did not take place. But there were salary changes that were added to base that did take place, and the whole step moved to reflect those changes.
So, thank you for that, man. Were you finished with your?
Yes.
So, if I'm a firefighter and I've been here 10 years, 11 years, and I say that my step, I have not received my step in 4 years, 5 years. What does that mean?
That you've not moved steps. So I may have gotten as the city manager just explained, I've got moved within my step, but I did not advance to the next step. So if I'm on a step 2, then I didn't go to, in firefighter language, I did not go to step 3.
Right. But the money has increased, however,
Within
by
that
virtue,
particular step.
it's in that step.
Within the step.
Right. Okay, I'll stop here for now because I know my colleagues have some questions, but I think it's really important that we get this out to the public square as well.
Councilwoman Caballero.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for the excellent presentation. Could you go forward there real quick and then one more? I want the examples of the individual. So what would be helpful for me is to actually do what y'all did here with the same, like, because this is what we did. I would love to see the same with actual folks if we done the steps. Like I see the totals 2 previous slides, but the totals don't help me. So, because I just look at it and I'm like, okay, that's an obscene amount of money, right? Which I think all of us are probably cognizant of that. I would like to see, just because these are actual employee numbers, so that I can see because what we're hearing is I didn't move a step. Now I can go and figure out the math, but I think y'all can do it way faster than me. And so I would love to see, you know, if we had done the plan as it's created, not what was actually done because of COVID pandemic, that would help me understand what are our, in this moment, mostly firefighters sharing. So I would love to see that. And then I think the other thing that would be helpful is could you explain so that folks in the public understand, we have 2 main pay structures, the step plan and then the open range. Can you explain, like, you know, the differences?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. So, as city manager Page just said, we have 2-step plans. So one is for sworn police and fire, and then we have a general employee step plan. Our open range step plan is not based on steps. It's normally designed to be a minimum, a mid, and a maximum. And we typically would hire within that minimum to maximum, depending on the position in the open range. When we hire for step, we hire and put that person within the step plan, depending on that position. And then their progression happens based on, various factors within that step. So when the firefighters say, I didn't move my step, they're basically saying, I didn't go from step 2 to step 3. In an open range, you would not see that. That's just, you have a salary and that's it.
So it's more.
It's based on merit, just like all of it. We do all have merit. We also are all in the merit plan. And so for open range, it's a percentage of your current salary for the police, fire, and general employee. It's moving to the next step.
Thank you, I appreciate that, and I have one more question. Can we go to the, again, to the examples of folks? And then can you go back to so the base pay for the beginning pay in 2019 for a firefighter was 34,000 and some change, right? And then but now currently you're saying it's 45,115? No, that's just that person.
Just this particular person moved from $34,388, and over time is now at $45,115.
Okay, what would be the base pay for somebody coming in the organization today?
That's a great question. Do you know that?
Yes,
Where-
we know.
I'm not
Folks
sure.
send that to us.
So,
I just turned to the team.
so in
They're
this
different.
particular position, step 0, I believe is 42,966. And that is
Could you say that again, I'm sorry?
42,966. And I'm looking at the HR.
Yeah,
team in that.
they're pulling it now.
Yes, and that is because this example is someone that is on step 1.
Okay,
So step 0 would be 42,966.
and that's for a firefighter.
That's for a firefighter.
Could you tell me the same for the same thing, because we've got the fire, we've got the police, and then we've got just a general employee?
They're working on it now.
Thank you. And I can get this also in email, I don't want to hang this up, but
Okay.
what I would like, because the other thing that we hear a lot is that just our entry pay, day one, fire recruit is significantly less than what they're seeing in other. Again, this is what we're being told. And so what I want to understand is, what are the actual numbers so that there's evidence one way or the other?
Okay.
And so that is why I would like to understand for the general, just like the examples here for police, fire, and a general employee. If you walk in today or on July 1 with what we're proposing, what are you going to get as a Durham City employee? Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Williams, and then followed by Councilwoman Jose.
Thank you. Thanks for the information. It was a lot. So I'd like to ask very clarifying questions for the folks that are watching and for myself. So the percentage, this is a good slide right here. So the percentage increase from 2019 to 2023 for a fire recruit is about 31.2%. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay,
That's just what's on the slide. For this particular person.
right, for a recruit.
Mhm.
And for captain, it would be about 33%.
That's correct.
So that's a 33 or 31% raise in 4 years. So what I'm also hearing is I'm below the livable wage. And I want to be really intentional about putting what I'm hearing out in the atmosphere so we can, be able to just correct it or address it rather. Let me ask this question rather. So we provided a raise in 2021 for fire and police, is that right?
I'm sorry, 20.
Was it
It is actually January of 2022.
January 2022. Were those the only departments that we gave that raise to?
The particular market increases that you're referencing went to police and fire at the time. It was a special market study that was done for public safety, and we implemented it mid-year, January of 2022.
All right. Did we provide any type of raises for any other city employees? And if so, what was the comparison percentage?
So for the fiscal year of 2022, it was 2% for general employees and a similar 2% for open range employees.
And it was 5%. Let's see, 2022. Okay, so it was 5% for fire and police.
2022?
I'm just trying to follow along from 2022 to 2023. What I'm trying to get to the bottom of is the value of the step versus the actual step that they're supposed to be in. Because I think the argument is, I want to be in my appropriate step, but are we looking at years of experience, or are we looking at the value of the step where they are placed? And this is for fire specifically.
So So in the particular pay plan that we currently operate in, that pay plan was implemented for police and fire in 2017. And it was implemented after a study or a complete study or redesign of the plan was done. And then the employees who were present and working for the city at that time were placed into that pay plan in a way that we progressed from that point forward. So in some cases, if someone had been here different amounts of time, but they were doing the same position, so they're a fire driver, but they've been here different amounts of time, that was given consideration to the initial step that they were placed on. Once everyone is placed, once an implementation takes place, everyone in a step plan, everyone is on a step. At the next time that a raise is provided, it is a 5% change in pay from where they were, and that 5% represents a step. So there's 5% between each step. So that is how it was implemented, and it was intended to operate after that. But that was in 2017.
Gotcha. Okay. And so basically, the year that we did not have a step increase, we implemented a raise. No.
That is correct.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And when we say raise, we want to be very, very clear. It is a percentage increase and is added to base pay.
The bottom line increase. All right. And the reason why I'm asking these questions is because I don't want, I want folks to know that we value, all of our staff, but I also wanted to be clear that when the world shut down, we still stepped up. And I also want folks to know that, the concern is heard. But also, I want to ask this question: what happens if we're meeting certain requests that we're hearing? What happens if we adjusted this step when no one received a step increase? What would happen if we did that for the entire city enterprise? What would that cost? Do you know that number?
It's on the slide.
Oh,
Right there, no, right there, 16.9 million.
so $17 million, and that would have to come from the general fund
No.
or tax increase?
No, yes, it has to be recurring. Anytime we are implementing salary increases, there has to be a revenue source that is recurring to cover it, as well as the, raises in the future as part of our multi-year. We have to predict over time what will happen when any salaries are increased.
Like we did with fire and police, and that's recurring now. That's annual.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. So I just wanted to, I know it may have been a little confusing, but I just wanted to ask those clarifying questions to see where we are and what hard choices we have to make. Also projecting our values out there, which is projected in our, reflected in our budget.
I think to just add to that, Councilman Williams, when I talk with the county manager, that translates into a 4% tax increase to 16. I'm a city manager. Is that correct?
Yes, based, in general, based upon our $4.1 million for 1 cent on the tax rate.
All right, thank you so much. I want to just thank my colleagues for asking these questions, because this is confusing. And so, just trying to figure out, I guess my first question is, at what point do you get a step? Is it every year? Is it every 5 years? And how do you get the step?
Let me respond. Be a little bit efficient. This is Robert's first presentation, so that's why I'm butting in. But, essentially, implementation of a step plan is a plan. I want to say on the record, it is not a guarantee of a future salary increase, because we operate on an annual budget. And that budget is presented and it is adopted. But it is a plan. Anytime we have a pay plan that is in existence and it is a step plan, that means that it is anticipated that once a year, an employee who is on a step plan will move from the salary that they're in up 1 step. And that 1 step is 5%.
Okay. And so that is anticipated based on budget, right? So I guess my question is, many, many years ago, I worked for the city in New York, and we were on step plans, but it was like, after 5 years, this is what your salary was. After 10, so you knew what you were gonna get in a certain percentage rate in terms of years. So that's why I wanted clarity on that, because just to understand the difference between the step plan.
Yeah, it is a plan that if it's operating and is funded, then you would move 1 step each year, and that step will be valued at 5%.
So it's not really guaranteed that you would get
No,
the step?
there's no
So
guarantee.
when the firefighters are saying that they didn't get their step, are they aware that that's not a guarantee? Is that something that was told to them when they were hired, that you would be on the step plan and you might get it? I'm just clarity.
So I don't know what is, what anyone is thinking in terms of, what they're told. What I am saying here is that every year we have to adopt a budget, and that budget that is adopted includes recommendations for pay, like we're doing here today. And we always want to make sure that, we can reward our employees with pay and benefits that this budget can afford. So, in my career here, the time that we did not do raises for employees, it was not the first time. It has happened before, but it is always based upon the economic conditions that surround us and the budgetary constraints that we have, and what we recommend and what ultimately the council adopts for us.
I guess, so my other question is, if we look at the fire recruit, so in 2019, they started out as 34, right? And if they, up into 2023, they're now at 45,000, right? But you just correct me if I'm wrong, but a new person coming in is at 42, right? So someone who's been here for 5 years is at 40, so they're only $3,000 apart in terms of somebody who's coming in?
So the staff just pulled the numbers. So a fire recruit comes in at 40,682 today.
You said
40,682.
40,000.
682.
So someone who has been here for 5 years would be at 45. So they're only a $5,000 difference of someone who's been here for 5 years opposed to someone coming in.
According to the math, that's correct. What you just said is correct.
Okay, so that's concerning for me. But the other thing is that in I guess in the comprehensive plan that you're gonna do, because I've been looking at, just from my own knowledge, the salaries in different cities opposed to our firefighters here. And one thing I know that Mayor Pro Tem said that, we have good benefits here. The other thing we do have is good training. And I hear that all the time too, that we have the best training here. And I guess, again, my concern that I said in pre-budget, and I just thought it was kind of swept over, but in pre-budget, because I had met with the firefighters to discuss trying to look at this, is that we are training the best and they are leaving and going someplace else. And so that really is a concern for me again. And so I myself have taken the time to look at the different city salaries. And we are losing people, who are being trained in the best place here to go other places. So again, that's really a concern for me. And that like somebody coming in, that it's only like you've been here 5 years and you're only $5,000 difference. Every day you're putting their life on the line. Every day when they go into a burning building, they may not come out to their family. So it's just really disheartening to me that's so close, and I just wish we could do something different to increase their salaries.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I have 2 questions. So for the fiscal year that we're talking about now, the proposal is 2% structural adjustment and everybody moves up a step. So essentially everyone gets 7%. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So during the COVID period when we weren't moving people up steps, but we were giving raises within the steps, like what's the rationale for doing it one way or another? Because would it cost about the same to just move the step up 2% and move everybody up a step?
I would
Rather
defer to
than
the city
give
manager. I'm
the
sorry.
raise within the step? So it doesn't seem to matter in terms of how much money they get, but it feels different to people clearly.
So when you have a plan with 5% between each step, if the proposal is not to move a step, if it's say 3% or 2%, you will not be on a step with that type of raise. So the strategy, in order for someone to receive an increase in pay that is not equal to 1 step, which would be 5%, you actually move the step, the percentage that the raise is. So if the raise in this case in 2022 for fire recruit was 19%, instead of moving, almost 4 steps, you move the 1 step, you increase it 19%. That is how you implement that raise. It doesn't equal what a step is. A step is 5%. So the councilwoman asked to, look at an example of if the steps had been moved instead of what happened here, and we can certainly do that, but I can tell you that it's going to be a lower amount because each would have only been 5% per year for 4 years.
Right. Okay.
If this is 30.
Yeah, so this 19, obviously you're not gonna move people 4 steps in a year because it doesn't make sense with the concept of a step plan. But I'm assuming we didn't do this because we didn't know this problem was gonna happen. But like we could have moved everybody a step and then increased them 15% or something like that, But I'm guessing we didn't think to do that because we didn't realize that people were gonna be upset about not getting steps.
So I would say that, it's not necessarily we didn't think to do it. There's, there are different reasons for moving. And we happen to have here a combination of what we're trying to implement as market and merit. But merit is actually tied to an additional raise after a year of performance. So in the case
I'm
of.
sorry, because, right, okay, so merit is different from step, or is step replacing merit in a step plan?
So pay for performance, we call it pay for performance.
Right.
And it requires a certain level of performance in order to get the step. So there potentially are people who work here who don't get the step, but it's very, 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 very few. I don't know what the percentage is, but we are way above, I would say 95% of employees who do receive pay for performance on an annual basis, whether they're in the step plan or they're in the open ranges, because we have other methods for working with people who do not. But the majority of city employees do receive that. So,
Councilwoman Hoziana.
So again, thank you, Councilwoman Dodd, because I'm trying to get some clarity on it in terms, so the firefighters can actually get a merit-based increase too, or no?
it is a step.
It's a step.
It's a
So
step.
they don't, okay, so
It's
they,
a step.
so they are only step-based, so they don't get the merit-based.
It's pay for performance. It's called pay for performance. But if you're in one of the step plans, the amount is 5%. If you're in an open range, that amount may be 4% up to 6%, depending upon the level of performance. So it's all paid for performance. It's just 5% if you're in public safety, and it could be 4% up to 6% if you're in an open range, and 4% in the general employee step plan. Those are the current plans that we operate.
I have a couple questions as well. One, probably is more of a request along with Councilwoman Caballero's request. I think it would be helpful if I'm able to see an example of the compression issue. We've heard a lot about compression, and I'm not exactly sure, how that plays out for someone. So if we could see a couple of examples of what that issue looks like as well. I'm also would like to see, I guess, some examples or positions maybe of who would be considered in the open range, what those positions are
Okay.
really, or in the general step range. In looking at one of the charts, those were the employees that only got the 2%. So I want to be cognizant that we are knowledgeable about who exactly those folk are. So that will be helpful for me as well. The other thing, if you could talk a little bit about the comprehensive pay study, when you would expect to implement that, how long does it last? If we do it, then when would we take action on it? Just a little bit more detail so we kind of know. And if we do that, if we were to, it sounds like to me, we have an option of either going as high as a 4% tax increase or waiting for the comprehensive plan study to see how that plan pans out to determine next steps. So just so we have an idea of timing for those things, so everybody will know what we're talking about in that regard.
So it is included in our recommendations in this budget. So based on approval, then we would go ahead and get started. In fact, the class and comp manager has already started to formulate some ideas around it. It's our intent to be able, a comprehensive study, and I want to be very clear, takes time. And with that being said, when I say take time, it could take, I would say probably 4 to 6 months in order for us to we have to go through the RFP process. We have to then go out and get our consultant and then get our data. And it will depend largely on how other municipalities respond to us. So all of that takes time. So I'm saying it's going to take 90 days and we're going to come back with a response. I would say it's at least 6 months before we could come back and be able to have any conversations.
Yes, just to bring, we had, in 2017, 2019 comprehensive pay plan studies. They are usually, as Robin has mentioned, she was not here, but before, as we go, bring reports or interim reports, it would probably be in at least the third quarter of the fiscal year before final recommendations are agreed on. Also, any changes that need to take place would be most likely the majority of the impact of those changes would not be in this year's budget, because this year's budget is being adopted. It will be in the budget that begins in July of 2024. And maybe, some, if it is something urgent, some, mid-budget adjustments. But if that were to occur, we would have to be very, very transparent about what that means to the next year's budget. For example, when we did the public safety mid-year adjustment, it was approximately nearly $4 million. And then in order to annualize that was an additional $9 million that had to be absorbed in the operational budget.
Could you go back one slide where it shows us the total? I just want to, that one. So just so like high level, my understanding is essentially to right size the plans that we've already adopted. It would take us almost $17 million.
That's correct.
Okay, and so next year, that's just going to be more money. Okay, so I just want folks, like, this is a fantastic budget. And I know staff has worked diligently, and I know that we have been very aggressive, especially when I think about infrastructure. But I think at some point, we're gonna have to communicate to employees. I love our staff. I think everyone is innovative, fantastic. I think we have the best staff in the country, and I've been a lot of places, and I know that people envy Durham. But at some point, it becomes about choices. So if we're going to right size the ship, then it's not hundreds of initiatives, because we know that we can't ask our residents to absorb that large of a tax. At least I'm not comfortable doing that. So I think for us, as we think about next budget, this budget's glorious. I'm super happy. But it's going to be 18 million, whatever it is, because dollars just get more expensive. So at a certain point, we're going to have to start communicating to staff if you want us to right size the formula. I hear firefighters very clearly, but we've already been getting emails from other employees who will do those same step increases. The same challenge is happening for our police officers and others. And so I just want to be really, really transparent with the community, which is, I do believe that we're going to have to right size this. I think that we owe it to our employees. Are we going to be able to do it right now? No. Is it going to cost residents? Yes. And we just need to communicate that clearly to staff and the community at large. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you colleagues for excellent questions and conversation. Firstly, I just want to say, if we tell new hires that we're going to hire you at 2019 salary to deal with the compression issue in our city, that's going to be a de facto hiring freeze in Durham. Nobody's going to work for Durham hiring them at 2019 starting salaries, particularly if we're looking at the market and we're being realistic about what market factors are. Secondly, I think there are ways we can fix this short of, a $17 million commitment. I mean, there are plenty of creative ways. We have a lot of smart people working on this, and I think we do need to do something. But to the city manager's point, the step plan, our workers are not on contract. I mean, each year we negotiate a budget. And I think I heard one of the firefighters say we knew what the starting salary was when we signed up. They also knew what the benefits were. They knew what the plan is, and a plan is very different from a statute or contractual obligations. And I think that each year we negotiate in good faith to do right by our employees, and we will continue to. I just want to say, even if we were to spend $17 million, that still doesn't fix compression. It just takes the same numbers and just puts them at a higher level, but folk will still have compression issues. They'll be just complaining about more money. It'll just be at a higher level. So that does not fix the compression issue, the closeness of folks. So there's a lot more nuance and drill down we need to do on this plan, but I think we can address it. Again, it's a plan, is not a guarantee, but even with that, I think there are some things that we can do, and I'm looking forward to the comp plan, the more comprehensive plan study, more comprehensive study that'll come forward to help us navigate how to do right by our employees. So thank you so much for an excellent presentation. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for the time.
Thank you, all colleagues. Are there any further questions of Ms. Wynn? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we will move on to our capital improvement plan, and I'm going to turn it over to our deputy city manager, Bertha Johnson, and Trinae Schneider, who works in our city manager's office.
When Deputy City Manager Johnson is coming, I will be leaving you at 11 o'clock. I have a graduation to attend, so I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Thank you. And Mayor Pro Tem will take over at that time.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bertha Johnson, Deputy City Manager. I have with me presenting today Trinae Schneider, our Business Services Analyst. And I want to first thank Trinae for all of her work she's done on our EGI project. She has taken over the lead on that project over the last year on my behalf. Trinae has accepted a promotional opportunity in our solid waste department. And I'm so excited to see what she will be able to accomplish and explore and innovate with our new solid waste director. We are so sad she's leaving our office. She is a rock star, but we are happy that she's staying in the organization. So we also have with us our operational and our community building portfolio employees who represent our capital improvement plan. Those are the employees who actually develop the plan with our budget and management services department, as well as our finance department, who implement our CIP, as well as facilitate all of our discussions around all of our facilities that we own in Durham, not just the ones we occupy as city employees. So our capital funding plan is focused on ranking all of our projects using the equity scoring metrics. We continue to fund the green and equitable infrastructure projects, which you will hear about today, which is really the most exciting part of this presentation. This plan is subject to annual review, as you heard about our entire budget process, where we look at each of the projects every year, and we score those projects and we fund those projects to the best of our ability within our dedicated funding source for capital projects. So our process for 2024 was the same as every other year. We received CIP requests in January. In February, our departments presented recommendations to the internal committee, and we have residents. We have 4 residents who serve on that committee as well. They have an opportunity to ask questions about the projects, challenge if they want to, the scoring that the departments apply to the projects, and then also look at the equity tool as it relates to the projects. In April, recommendations are submitted to the city manager, and in May, as we are here today, we are presenting those recommendations to you. So here are the prioritization factors that are used on the projects. These are weighted differently. The equity factor is the most weighted, has the highest weight as it relates to the projects. General capital CIP, nothing exciting here. It is our normal CIP as we move through what we do in the city in terms of our sidewalk repair, our street resurfacing, as well as our dirt road, unpaved road paving, which is a 10-year program. We're in year 4 of that. We're really excited about continuing to move that project forward. And I'll leave it here in case you have any questions for a second. Yes.
This could be this could be due to times well before me, but back up a bit where it says prioritization factors and economic prosperity. When did we define that as preserves the environment, addresses climate change, and advances environmental justice?
So I believe we revamped this, was it 2 years ago? 2 years ago, we went through a process where we looked at our entire scoring system that we use for capital projects, which was adopted many, many years ago. And we went through that process. The team, the internal team, all of our departments represented here for CIP projects gave input into the recommendations around what factors we use. Those factors, as well as their proposed weight, were submitted to the city manager and the DCMs. We looked at those, we made some adjustments, and so I can share with you, but there's a document behind here that we can share with you that shows the weight for each of the factors, as well as there's a scoring sheet for each project, and the projects are scored, and the total score you'll see on this slide. So there's a total score and there's an equity score. So it wasn't something that we actually discussed in this forum. It was something that was developed along with the departments that actually implement our capital improvement plan.
Okay, and just to be sure, it's the other slide, prioritization factors. I don't want to hold us up now. It's just that, just based on my personal experience, it appears that economic. Oh,
Which
okay,
part
got you,
which part
okay.
are you referring to?
No, it's a typo, never mind.
I can't see it from here, so.
It needs, like, I don't understand how this is economic prosperity, but I could ask later, but it's swap, environment.
Oh, I thought you were asking about the process by which we use to,
Oh, no, that's why I was like, how do we define economic prosperity, but now I see it's a typo, it should be flipped.
It should be flipped. You got it?
Thank you.
Thank you. We got that.
See, I'm paying attention.
I went through that whole process. So here's the second half of our project. I mentioned the unpaved roads program, as well as our Wheels project and other projects that we discussed in depth with City Council and various City Council meetings. Our IT governance projects, those projects are submitted to the IT governance team, which consists of the deputy city managers as well as our budget and finance department. Those departments present those projects, and we actually vote on those projects to be included in our IT governance projects for the upcoming year. We don't have as many as we usually have because we're embarking upon selecting a new ERP system. And so we're only focused on projects that we must do during this time so that we can make sure we have capacity with our TS departments and other departments to select and implement our next ERP system. So enterprise funding plan, those projects, you don't see a score here, and we can give you the score, but essentially you have the solid waste group, you have the stormwater group, and you have the water sewer group. Those are funded within those individual funds. There was enough funding in those funds to fund all of the projects that were requested. Essentially, we scored them, but we made sure that they actually went through the same process, but there wasn't competition, and these are projects that we must, in most cases, implement. Fleet replacement program, just continuing to replace our fleet. We have implemented this project, this process many years ago, maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, and we continue that process. So I'm going to turn it over to Jina, who's going to talk about the most exciting part of this presentation today. And this will be the last time she will be with us on this project, but I'm sure you'll see her again with the solid waste program.
Thank you, Bertha. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So on February 25th, 2021, the Durham City Council approved the half-cent on the tax rate for equitable infrastructure investment. The purpose of the Equitable and Green Infrastructure Project is to prioritize investment in and engagement with the low-wealth communities and communities of color that have historically been excluded from or harmed by policy decisions. EGI aims to rectify these harms and improve infrastructure in low-income communities and communities of color with a focus on historically disinvested communities. These infrastructure investments can address disparities and promote environmental justice. And so during the fiscal year 22-23, communities were prioritized in the first round of the funding to develop proposed projects. During engagement events with residents, or during engagement events with residents, the following projects categories emerged: enhanced and equitable green spaces, water quality, sidewalks, street paving, and pedestrian safety, access, and traffic calming. So I'll just make a note that you're gonna notice in the projects that we don't have any street paving projects. And ultimately that is because, street paving is a significant part of what Public Works does, and it has significant costs that would have maybe been too significant for the funding for this round. In the next few slides, I will provide an overview of our proposed projects for fiscal year 24. Ideas for these projects were generated by our EGI Equitable Community Engagement, by the NIS department, as well as other engagement around the 2019 WD Hill Recreation Center renovation engagement, 2022 City of Durham Resident Survey, engagement led by the local park champions to develop park improvements, the listening and learning phase of the comprehensive plan data, Lion Park community guided improvements, the sidewalk condition study and sidewalk assessment management plan, August 2022, and the splash and play project engagement. So our consideration for the projects included factors such as the communities and what they wanted and their requests, feasibility, shovel readiness, and costs. And so, as you can see on the screen, this is an overview of the projects, and some of them are self-explanatory, and so some of them I'm going to just give a brief explanation. And so, Bragtown sidewalks, along with any other sidewalks mentioned for this year round of funding, they are for sidewalk repairs, sidewalk and curb ramp repairs. The next you see on the stormwater regional retrofit. So you will notice that there are 7 regional retrofits for 7 prioritized communities. A stormwater regional retrofit solution will serve to assist with enhancement of water quality and assist in reduction of street flooding and flooding along major ditches and streams at a neighborhood level. At Lake Park, the Lake Park culvert is to reconstruct the culvert at the park to keep pedestrians out of the drive aisle. This will be the final piece of funding needed to complete the improvements at the park to the crosswalk for access to the sidewalk on the opposite side of the street. Traffic calming assessments. In engagement, there was a lot of concern about traffic and pedestrian access and safety. And so you will also see 7 traffic calming assessments in those prioritized communities. The traffic calming would include an analysis of traffic calming, traffic signals, and crosswalk needs, and to incorporate green design in the construction once it gets there. For Red Maple and Lakeview Parks Connector Trail, so we would do some planning and engagement study to determine community interest for developing a pedestrian safe trail between Red Maple and Lakeview Parks. Then next we have here just Burton Park walkways. So repair and or replace asphalt and concrete walkways through the park as a complement to the recent playground replacement. And then we have here just project management to ensure that we get the work done and that we do a good job on these projects. In Cornwallis, we have a stormwater regional retrofit again and traffic calming assessments. We are also planning and engagement to further develop the idea by funding planning and engagement to study and determine the community interest and feasibility around the request for a community garden in Cornwallis. In East
Shari,
Durham.
may I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Under citywide project management, is that for like an outside consultant or people we're gonna be paying over to kind of monitor these projects for us, or what that 100 grand for citywide project management, is that what we're not doing internally in terms of managing these projects? What does that 100 grand represent, please?
So we don't know at this time, but we wanted to ensure that we have the funding allocated to do so. And so that may be work we can do internally, or if we need to utilize external services to be able to do that.
I stuck 100 grand in there, I don't know what you want to do with it.
We-
I'm just playing. Go ahead. I see that, 100.
So in East Durham, sidewalks, again, those will be repairs to sidewalks and curb ramps. On the Albright building decommission, that is a plan to demolish abandoned buildings and depave in a process to continue to enhance the experience at Long Meadow and East End Parks. And then we have another stormwater regional retrofit, and then the R. Kelly Bryant Bridge Trail, accessible bathrooms at C.R. Wood Park, LED lights at the court and fields at East End Park for the futsal and tennis courts. And then at Birchwood Park, improvements. This would include public art ground playing and carbon concrete basketball and pickleball court improvements. And then another traffic calming assessment. Next, we have WD Hill enhancement. So this would include a restoration of historic tennis courts and restoration of the futsal court. Replacement of incandescent lights to LED lights for tennis, and complements a CIP LED light project for futsal courts. And then an accessible playground. And then next, in Ganyard Farms, a stormwater regional retrofit and traffic calming assessment. In Goose Creek, the Sherwood Park LED lights and enhancement would include, first, it would complement enhanced renovations already funded to athletic courts, surfaces, and the crime prevention through environmental design improvements of walkways and removal of invasive and overgrown vegetation. Also, park and access improvements for playground accessibility, bridges across the creek entrances, and create youth football practice fields. And then in Lion Park, stormwater regional retrofit and Lion Park placemaking in Polly Murray Center, which will include creative placemaking for planning and construction at Polly Murray for history and social justice. And then another traffic calming assessment. And then in Merrick Moore, so we have a number of Merrick Moore enhancements. So enhancements will include features at the front of the park, create more access to play and provide necessary infrastructure like bathrooms and walking tracks, nature-oriented playground design and fencing and planting, a walking track with seating in an outdoor classroom area. Also, public art along the interior and exterior of the roller rink, formerly known as Wheels, to reflect the community stories. Another stormwater regional retrofit, the art as mentioned, traffic calming assessment, and sidewalk repairs. In Pearson Town community, the Solite Park full-size athletic court, basketball and pickleball and more with lighting. And then in Stokesdale, so a Stokesdale connection is to construct a pedestrian safe and ADA compliant connection at Hillside Park between the WD Hill Recreation Center and pool at Hillside. And then a stormwater regional retrofit, traffic calming, and then in Twin Lakes, LED lights for lighting at the basketball court. And then in Walltown, a full depth reclamation and renovation of basketball courts, new striping and new goals and backboards, accessible playground, restriping, and parking lots. And so if you have any questions about these specific projects, I have many of my colleagues here who helped develop, the ideas for the projects. They're here to answer any questions. Before we get to that, I have my colleague Christy West here from the Public Works GIS team, and she will be briefly demonstrating the map for this work so that you all and the residents can see where the projects are focused and who those resources will serve. You ready, Christy?
Good morning, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. I've been here 16 years, but this is the first time in front of you, so bear with me while I get this situated. Okay. For the past 4 years, the Public Works Geographic and Business Information Systems Group has been leading the charge for applied equity in our operations portfolio. We have built in-house web maps, dashboards, and databases so that applied equitable practices are at the forefront of all of our decision-making. We pride ourselves on the ability to use technology to support this endeavor. The purpose of this map is to display the CIP projects list defined by the city manager's office for focused equitable neighborhoods. The gray area is the original green and equitable census block groups layer developed in 2020 that met the criteria for green neighborhoods and social economic indicators defined by the Budget Department and Neighborhood Improvement Services. The layer in different colors is the current focused equitable neighborhoods for FY24. They were the ones that the city manager deemed priority areas for FY24. The blue outline is the Durham city limits. The polygons in red outline are the FY24 CIP projects. And the gray lines are the census block groups, which is where the equitable data comes from. The predefined bookmarks represent the FY24 CIP projects. The bookmarks are used to take you to the neighborhood or neighborhoods for that particular project. Selecting the area will open information windows for all layers overlapping that area. You can scroll through the information tabs to see the data for each layer in that area. So for example, Lakeview Park Culvert. You can see, 1 second. Okay, let's try that again. So for the Lakeview Park Culvert, we can zoom to it. That worked, okay. And you can see that there is a project for, when we click on it, we can see that there's a general project for general services and transportation to build a culvert, as Trinae said, to divert pedestrians from walking to the drive aisle. But there is also a sidewalk project, a stormwater retrofits project by Public Works, and a traffic calming assessment by transportation, all in this one neighborhood. You can also see information on Lakeview Park and data from the Census Bureau that shows percentages of color here. And below poverty level percentages for that block group. So turning some of the top layers off, will reveal some other layers, such as sidewalks, trails, and greenways and parks. And then clicking the home button, we can get back out to the full extent. Okay. So you can also search by address to see if a property is within the FY24 equitable neighborhoods and what CIP projects are nearby. We'll take in just a random address. So you can see that the layer is outside of the 2020 Green and Equitable Neighborhoods layer, but it is within the new FY24 Equitable Neighborhoods layer. And there's also a 3-mile R. Kelly Bryant Bridge Trail project planned nearby, a stormwater retrofits project, sidewalk project, and traffic calming assessment. If you click and go through the tabs, you can see each one of those. So that's pretty much this map, what's in here. The PWGIS group has also created other equity web maps and can be made available upon request. Thank you.
Thanks, Christy. Thanks, everyone. That concludes our presentation. And again, I have many of our staff members here to answer any questions you may have about any of the projects.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. Please note I'm assuming the gavel and the mayor is absent. Also note that our honorable colleague, Councilmember Freeman, has joined us. Good afternoon to her. Good to see you. So colleagues, we've heard the presentation. At this time, I'm going to yield to any of you who may have any questions or comments. Councilmember Williams, and then I think I saw Councilmember Caballero's hand.
Yeah, sure, thank you. How long does it normally take for some of these projects to roll out? if we accept this or approve this today, when should we start seeing some of this to happen?
So it depends on the various projects. We're planning to have a kickoff as soon as we receive the direction from you all. And we plan for projects to start right away in the new fiscal year. But the various projects have different timelines as far as when they would be completed. And so some may be completed in the fiscal year, some have plans for 2 years, some have plans for 4.
Got you. And just some questions I'll ask just for clarification. What I don't see on here, I'm assuming has already been approved and funded. Ardmore Drive is a residential neighborhood. I don't see it on here, but I do get a lot of emails about that area. And I'm assuming that's already funded. Is that correct? Okay.
Public Works Director.
Okay, Public Works Director Williams.
Good morning, everyone. Marvin Williams, Department of Public Works. I thought I had a few more minutes before I got up. Yes, Ardmore Drive is actually funded. Right now, we have it funded this year for the initial design effort that we're doing. Going forward, as we finish that design, we'll make requests for additional funding for the utility relocations that are needed and then the actual construction. There's no reason for us to make those requests for this upcoming budget because we haven't completed design work yet. But for fiscal year 25, more than likely there will be a request coming forward for funds to actually construct that project.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Caballero.
Yeah, this is I don't know who to ask this question to. I have a question about the LED light projects. Just out of curiosity, are we thinking about, like some of the dark sky initiatives that we're seeing cities sign on to, and if we're thinking about what kind of LED choices we're making on that? And I know we're not a dark sky city, I'm just curious.
Good morning, Wade Walcutt, Parks and Recreation. Simply, yes, we are considering that, especially locations of those. And a lot of the lights that we're looking at are for athletic fields and courts. So they're positioned directly down and do not have a whole lot of light pollution.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other colleagues? All right, it's a couple of things. First off, congratulations to both of you on lateral or promotions, I guess, and first time presentations here before us. You both were brilliant. I also want to congratulate just the city. Because we're kind of in this silo and just doing it, it may seem pedestrian and kind of commonplace to us, but it's really difficult to overstate just how far ahead Durham is of our colleagues and sister cities in the state when it comes to actually operationalizing equity. There comes a point where you have to start reprioritizing things and actually spending money to do the work of equity. We've had staff members come and present before the league because we were doing such groundbreaking things and in the vanguard of actually doing the work of equity. So I want to congratulate the city, you, Madam Manager, and all of your team that have really put our money where our mouths are in terms of equity. There are kind of two tracks going on. We're looking at our CIP, the reprioritizing projects. Then we have this EGI as well. So we are really coming at this in a number of ways. And again, just really, really exciting to see us actually in a tangible, observable, measurable way reprioritize things based upon an equity score. With that said, I do want to ask about some of these projects that, at least at initial blush, seem to have some overlap with other areas. We talked about sidewalks and things of that nature, but these stormwater regional retrofits, what exactly is that, and how bad do things have to get before we retrofit?
Again, Marvin Williams. So with the stormwater regional retrofits, it's really going to be initially a study at the neighborhood level to really understand what those stormwater needs are and how we need to address them. It could be anything from roadway flooding that may occur to ditches that may be overflowing. So it's really going to depend on what we get from that study in those neighborhoods to identify what actual projects come from that and what time frame they would be completed.
And could those things, or should not those things, that information be captured just by regular order of the functioning of your, does that need to be something ad hoc for money from this fund? Shouldn't we be doing that through our regular kind of assessment of city needs in your department?
Well, we actually do. This just gives more of a focus on these specific neighborhoods instead of allowing them to come up through the bigger, larger plans that we do that may come at a different time frame. So this actually speeds up those processes so that we have an intentional focus in these areas that have been identified as priority.
I got you. Isn't it possible to do that? Because with our regular CIP, separate from this, we've actually reprioritized some things. Is it possible to do that with funds from our regular CIP rather than using these funds to do that?
It can, but it will require us to go back and relook at our entire CIP for stormwater, reprioritize what projects that actually came up for funding through that funding source versus the EGI funding, and then decide do we want to fund them through the stormwater fund or fund them through EGI, which may bump back some of the projects in the stormwater.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Well, which of course, if we reprioritize things in our CIP, then by definition, something's going to be bumped back anyway. For even if we, all right. I saw in Merrick Moore and we hear about sidewalks. I'm in Merrick Moore every day to get to my other job, and you see people walking down the road. It's very, very challenging in that community. I noticed public art, the art was 150 grand, and I think the sidewalks were 86,000 in Merrick Moore. Seems like a pretty specific kind of number to me. Do we already have an idea of what we're going to do in Merrick Moore with that? I assume we do, the 86 grand.
Yes, it's actually for sidewalk repairs that we've identified through the sidewalk assessment that we presented before council a few months ago.
Gotcha.
So that's what we use as our guide to determine the repair needs in each of the neighborhoods.
Gotcha. I think that's all of the questions I had. Again, this is a, when we look back over our time, there'll be certain things I think we'll remember and can be particularly proud of for voting for making happen. This will certainly be one of these things where we literally put our money where our mouth is. Durham has agreed to tax ourselves. We take this so seriously, and we have taxed ourselves to do these types of projects, and it's a really cool thing. You don't get to say that often when we're working in government, but this is pretty cool. So thank you all. Colleagues, I'll check one more time. If any of you have any questions or comments on this particular item. I also want to know, colleagues, let me check with you. We have, I think, about 2 or 3 presentations left. Does anybody need a break, or do you want to push on? Break? Okay. We're going to stand in break for 10 minutes. We'll come back at 11:28. So we are in recess. The Director of our Public Works Department, Marvin Williams. Good afternoon, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Oh, yeah, good morning, my bad.
Well, good morning again, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. My name is Marvin Williams with the Department of Public Works. We did have the management team for the Public Works Department here. Our assistant directors, Paul Whitkey, Tasha Johnson. We actually had several staff members from Public Works here too as well, because they were here to answer any questions that might have come up about the CIP projects that were listed or the equitable and green infrastructure projects that were listed. And it's actually good timing that we're doing this presentation because it also happens to be National Public Works Week. So thank you. So I actually just take this opportunity to thank all the employees within Public Works for all the work that they do on a daily basis. That a lot of times goes unseen. It's kind of one of those things I say all the time, that if everything's going right, you really don't know our names or our faces. It's not until you get questions, concerns, comments, things along those lines that you really start to know who we are, what we do, and why we do. So today, I'll just give you a brief overview of our department, some of the key performance measures that we have, and then answer any questions that you may have. So here, it's just giving you, again, an overview of our department. We're broken up into three main divisions, with our maintenance division, our stormwater division, and our engineering division, and also our geographic business and information systems unit, which, as you saw in the prior presentation, provides a lot of support, not only for us within Public Works, but for various departments throughout the city when it comes to their GIS needs, technology needs, anything along those lines. So here, just give you a snapshot to show you what we do in each of those divisions, how we're structured, and the org chart here just gives you some of the major programs, where it's street and concrete maintenance, street sweeping, our stormwater infrastructure group, engineering, development review, design services, a variety of things in several different areas. So jumping right into our performance measures, potholes is something that you all hear about constantly, about the condition of our streets. Thankfully, we had a pretty mild winter this year, so we're not tracking overall to have the number of potholes that we've had in previous fiscal years, but there's still a problem. And that's one thing that the manager was aware of when she decided to dedicate additional funding to the street resurfacing program to increase that from the $10 million a year that we have been receiving on an annual basis, moving it up to $15 million. If you all recall, there's still more work to go in that area. The consultant that we had that did the pavement condition assessment last year, he did make a recommendation to us that we look to get the program into that $20 million range, $25 million range at some point as the city continues to grow and our street network continues to grow. But these two measures here just kind of give you an overview where our average pothole repair costs is slightly going up because material costs are going up, labor costs are going up, but we're still able to respond to a majority of those potholes on a very timely basis within 3 days. Typically, we're at about 98% completion rate of potholes once we're made aware of them, of getting those filled for the traveling public. Another big program that you hear a lot about, sidewalks, as we just discussed in the previous presentation with the EGI funding, and also in the CIP portion, another major program for us where additional funding has been dedicated by the city manager, moving us up to $10 million a year for sidewalk repairs. And I'll again remind you all that you did receive a presentation from one of our consultants a few months ago regarding our sidewalk assessment that was completed recently, showing that we have a backlog of roughly $80 to $90 million of sidewalk repairs that are needed. So this begins our efforts to try and implement that program to address the sidewalk repairs that we identified at that time when the assessment was completed. So our costs for sidewalk repairs are slightly going up because this really captures the work that we do on our maintenance, with our maintenance division. And we've been moving more of our sidewalk repairs to a contract basis because some of the stretches are so long. We're not really capable of doing the amount of repair work in some locations with our maintenance crews, and we have to use a contractor to help supplement our workforce. And these two measures here touch our stormwater unit. Drainage service requests, you all get the emails at times from people with concerns about stormwater issues, whether it's within the street that they're located or on a state street, which we can provide limited assistance with, or within their private property. The But this just gives you an overview of the percentage of drainage requests that we review, respond to with some type of plan of action within a month's time. And it's actually been trending downward, as you see over the last couple of fiscal years, which is a good thing, because we're trying to do more proactive maintenance with our stormwater system, both between our stormwater division and our maintenance division as well. Development review, another big program within Public Works. We have a lot of construction activity going on within the city. We are one of those departments that play a major role with that, along with our planning department, city county inspections, as well as the Department of Water Management. It just gives you a snapshot here of the number of plans that we have coming into the department. Right now, we're estimating that we'll have over 3,500 plans or items to review by the end of this fiscal year. You'll see that's an increase over the target that we initially had of 2,400. So it just shows that the construction activity isn't continuing. There doesn't seem to be a substantial drop in the activity, but there is a slight drop compared to fiscal year 22 and 21. And the number of plans and items that we process and review on a timely basis, we're completing those. Our goal is 90%. We're coming in about 88% of the time, completing those within the timeframes for the various items that we do review. So then I think we're the only department that has 2 resource allocation tables because we're split between the general fund, water sewer fund, and stormwater fund. But this one just gives you a snapshot for the general fund. Pretty straightforward. I'll just note the one big change that we had there, the drop of 99%. That was one-time funding that we received to purchase equipment and supplies for our maintenance division. We didn't need that again going into the next fiscal year. So there was no reason to have that dollar amount dedicated within the capital line item there for fiscal year 23-24. And the stormwater fund, pretty much the same thing. You'll see again a couple of drops there where we have reductions from the appropriation from fund balance because of our capital programs. We're not anticipating to have as big of a need going into the next fiscal year, so we didn't need to move as much money from the stormwater fund balance over into a spendable account for us. So that's the big reduction there. And just a couple of budget highlights, some things I already touched on. Our ongoing street maintenance program, $15 million has been proposed in the upcoming budget for our paving needs. Again, that's something that we're trying to build on every year. We make the request and try to keep you all informed of what the needs are. And I'm sure you're aware of that just based on the number of inquiries that you get from residents about street conditions. Same thing with sidewalks, increasing that program to $10 million going into fiscal year 23-24. That's what's been proposed. From that, we're hoping to be able to pave roughly 30 lane miles of city streets, do some type of preservation of 90 lane miles of city streets. And I stress that city streets because residents still don't understand the difference between the city streets and the North Carolina Department of Transportation streets that are within the city that they're actually responsible for maintaining and repaving. And we're also planning to do roughly 7,000 linear feet of sidewalk repairs with the funding that's been proposed in the upcoming budget. And we have a new program that's still in the development process for us, but it will be another big ask for funding in future years, our bridge asset management program. Because we've gotten our hands around city streets, we've gotten our hands around sidewalks. Now we're trying to get a good handle on bridges that the city owns and maintains. So as we complete that asset management program over the next calendar year, we'll look into the next budget process to see what that funding need will be on an ongoing basis in order to continue with that program and ensure that we have no critical repair needs or chances of failure on any bridges that the city owns or maintains. And I know I talked fast and went through the slides fast, but be happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you so much, Director Williams. Colleagues, I'll yield now to you for any questions. Councilman Freeman, good morning.
Thank you. I think just appreciate the presentation, and I am excited that we are focused on trying to get closer to meeting that study's goal. I am very excited that this year's budget is really reflective of making sure our streets and our sidewalks are up to par, just acknowledging how fast our city has been growing. Those repairs are backdated, backlogged, and so doing that and trying to move forward at the same time, which I think is phenomenal. And that's when I say thank you very much to your department. I know I call often, and have lots of emails directed to you, so I really want to appreciate you.
Thank Thank you, Councilmember. Anyone else? I do have a quick question, and Councilor Rayford, you may, this might be germane to you. At what point is the city liable for damage to our residents' vehicles and personal property for potholes, and to what extent is the city liable? I get a lot of emails sometimes. I know we sent them to you folks damaging their vehicles in potholes, particularly ones that have persisted, that have been there for a while. So give us a sense of what's the city's exposure? When do we become liable, and to what degree are we liable for damage to property relative to potholes that we can document?
Good morning, Mayor Pro Tem, Riordan, City Attorney's Office. So cities in North Carolina do have a statutory duty to maintain streets. And as we've learned, sidewalks. But it's not a strict liability. So just because someone hits a pothole doesn't make the city strictly liable for repairs to whatever personal property they've had that's been damaged by the pothole. The city has to have notice of the problem, and the city has to have had a reasonable time to respond to the problem. And responding to the problem doesn't necessarily mean correcting the problem or fixing it. It might mean coning it. It might mean cordoning off an area. It might mean, putting some sort of public alert. And it's very fact intensive. It's funny, I had the county attorney and I did a town hall with a community in Durham a couple weeks ago, and this very question came up because they've been having sidewalk problems in the neighborhood. And it's so fact specific, right? It's like, when did the city get notice? How did the city get notice? How much time has elapsed? So there's no specific deadline, city must act within 2 weeks to at least put a cone on it or cordon it off or fix it. It's a reasonable time standard, which in a court of law, is going to be left to the trier of fact and the trier of law to determine. I know that's a fuzzy lawyer answer, but there's no, you hit a pothole and the city's responsible for fixing that. I mean, we have to go back through our records. Did the city get notice of it through our systems? If we did get notice of it, when did we get notice of it? Was it 3 days ago? In which case, maybe the city hasn't had a reasonable time to act, or was it a year ago? And we're just backlogged, and maybe we do need to make a repair. I do know that the risk management division, I don't know if they're in the room, they do pay claims fairly routinely for that sort of damage to cars related to hitting potholes and objects in roads.
Right. No, that wasn't fuzzy at all. So there have been, in fact, times when we provided relief to residents without going to court. As a point when okay, that's good to know. Secondly, with the development of a bridge asset management program, have we leveraged any infrastructure dollars here in Durham? Federal infrastructure dollars?
So yes, we have been pursuing those federal dollars, but it's kind of an odd situation. So our bridges are in need of repairs, but they're not at the point where they're so critical in need of repairs that we score very well in any of those programs that have been made available. So my take on what's been provided by the current administration in DC is that the bridges need to be pretty much in a state of complete disrepair and are at the point of a failure or a major critical need that needs to be done right now. Thankfully, we've been proactive over the years. We have inspected all of our bridges every 2 years, and we know what repairs are needed, and we've made those, but that has hurt us at the same time, because then it doesn't make us a high-ranking municipality in order to get those federal dollars.
Right, yeah. The more likely you are to die, the higher chances of getting money.
Yes.
Yeah. Federal government. And so thank you so much. That's all I had. Colleagues, one last time for Director Williams, thank you so much. Good to see you. At this time now, we'll turn to our general services presentation. Director Jina Propst. Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning. Still good morning. Jina Propst, General Services Director. It's nice to be in front of you today. The General Services Department is responsible for building and maintaining city properties to make Durham a great place to live, work, and play. We like to do so with civic pride and with a public service mindset. I've just added those to our mission on the tagline. So I'm sure that our department is currently 123 FTEs. With our budget request this year, we're recommended for one additional staff person, which I will talk about in just a little bit. To orient you to our org chart, left to right, on the left-hand side, I wanted to point out our Assistant Director for Project Delivery Sustainability, Stacey Poston. She's here today. That includes our Project Management Division, our Real Estate Division, our Sustainability and Public Art and Cultural units. They are responsible also for staffing current boards, our Cultural Advisory Board, Public Art Committee, our Environmental Affairs Board, as well as liaisoning with our Keep Durham Beautiful Board as well. So they have outward facing as well as internal clients. Moving on to our Assistant Director for Facilities and Grounds and our Operations Unit, that's Kevin Lilly, he's here. He has the pleasure of having about 67% of our full-time employees under his umbrella. They are our frontline employees that show up every day that do the work that's listed here, from urban forestry to landscaping, to facilities management and maintenance, to custodial services. Also, I have Al Walker. He's our Fiscal Administrative Service Manager. He runs the business unit for us, as well as liaisoning with some of our community facilities. He's our money man and leads our cemeteries operations, which is really our only revenue producing enterprise, we call it enterprise, actions that we have within our department. We own 2 public cemeteries. And then finally, we have the Asset Management Division that has been around for about a year now. We are continuing to fill and manage that unit, which is a bridge between project management and facilities maintenance. Includes our computer platforms, our technology, everything that bridges information that helps us with our data analytics, along with our security management program. So, I did want to say one thing. We have had ups and downs with vacancies. At one point in time, less than about 2 weeks ago, we were fully staffed in our landscaping division, and then one of our staff members went to public work. I think you're here right now, but it was a promotional opportunity. We took someone from public works. It was a promotional opportunity. We had another staff member that went to water management. So it is great that we're seeing this movement as well as upward mobility and that they're staying in the city, but it still creates vacancies because we have all these opportunities. We've got 10 vacancies right now, 5 that are actively in interviews and others that are posted. So I think we'll continue to see this. I appreciate my team that continues to do quite a lot during this time. So, thank you. Okay, moving on. I talked about 67% of our staff is frontline. One of the most important things that our team does in our urban forestry, I consider them our first responders. They have to respond to severe weather events. They have to ensure that there's any blockages in the road, that they're removed. They take care of our trees, removal, pruning, site distance. Our goal is to complete our service request within 30 days. We anticipate being there by the end of this, an average of 30 days. We anticipate being there by the end of this fiscal year. We do that along with our team doing tree plantings. So we're out of that season and we don't expect any issues with hitting that mark. Next slide. So we prune, we remove, and we also plant trees. So a big bold goal that was established after we had a tree canopy assessment, as well as an EPA review of where we should plant trees. And it was established in our strategic plan. It said plant 1,500 trees a year, plant 85% of them in priority neighborhoods. When you put it in a strategic plan and you name it, then you have to do it. So that's what we've been doing. This year, we planted over 1,700 trees in public rights of way. Some of those have also been in coordination with Keep Durham Beautiful. And of that, we've exceeded our 85% threshold. About 96% have been in our priority neighborhoods. We'll be due for a refresh of our canopy study in 2025, and we're also going to be pursuing grants to try to help with that as well. Next slide. Okay. Our sustainability efforts. One measure that we track is our total greenhouse gas emissions and our progress towards our 2030 goal, which is that we reduce our emissions by half, which is a 30,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent is how it's measured. You'll see we've had really good progress. We expect that progress to continue with the electrification of our fleet. specifically also our buses, which are a big emitter of greenhouse gases. The other electrification that we've talked about with fleet replacements, our Green Source Advantage solar project that I'll touch on a little bit as well, future energy efficiency, water, all the other things that we've identified in our sustainability plan. We believe that we will continue to make great progress with that implementation, as well as implementation in solar and LEDs. We talked about it earlier, those type of improvements. Next slide. This is a snapshot of our portfolio for our project management division. They design and construct and plan projects on behalf of the city. We have various clients. We get the opportunity to work with the fire department, the police department. Parks and Rec is a great partner that we work with. This slide is meant to show kind of just like, what the overall portfolio health is and the volume of our work. This does not include anything y'all getting ready to approve. So we will constantly, be monitoring and prioritizing and ensuring that we have the right resources with our own staff or contracted out in order to manage all of our projects. So from last year to this year, our project size number of projects is down. If you'll go to the next one. Thank you, Al. But the dollar value is up. These are funded through capital, funded through maintenance and replacement, funded through sometimes operational funds, and some of our other funds like our commission center or DPAC or ballpark. So those are where some of those funding sources come from and where our projects come from. It's just a healthy life cycle. They don't end when we turn over the keys. There's a closeout and warranty phase. So we still have to manage that. That's a thing of our city resources also. It's like you finish and go off to a new project. You still have to manage the closeout and warranty phase as well. Next slide, please. The contribution of Keep Durham Beautiful volunteers. I love this slide. I love the progress that we've seen since COVID. I love the ability of our team to leverage our volunteers. The value of a volunteer by the national metric is $30 an hour. So we have an estimate over 7,000 volunteer hours, which is approximately 4,000 volunteers today. Keep Durham Beautiful has initiated a Litter Kit in Schools program. They're involved in litter leader training to help neighborhoods identify litter leaders that will assist with that will assist with ensuring that when you go to do these volunteer, you need to ensure that you've got the right PPE, that you've got gloves, that you've got trash cans, that you've got the equipment to do it. So that's one of the things that Keep Durham Beautiful ensures. We've seen a lot of folks really interested in participating with Keep Durham Beautiful, and I think that's just extremely positive, along with an Adopt a Street program that we continue to enhance. Finally, performance measures. We are tracking the average number of days to complete reactive work orders with our facility management team. So over the year, we typically complete about 4,500 work orders. That includes planned and preventative. This is focused mainly on the reactive. This is the stuff, it's too hot, it's too cold, something's leaking, something's broken. Something happened last week. A hawk flew into the second floor of the annex and a window was broken. So our team takes care of animals as well. But those are the type of reactive things that occur that we can't plan for, but we want to make sure that we do it timely. We are on track to complete on average within 8 days, and it takes away from our other planned work. So we have to know what that is so that we can adjust our team accordingly. Next, our resource allocation table. Our budget is approximately $18.5 million, comprised mainly of personnel services and operating, which will remain about the same. I did want to point out, as I did before, under program revenues, you'll see that we're forecasting around $602,000 for next fiscal year. That is comprised of our cemeteries anticipated revenue. We do get $27,000 from the county for Keep Durham Beautiful. Last year, we had county contribution for our cultural roadmap, but you won't see that this year. So that's where some of the changes, that would have been a one-time thing. Next slide, budget highlights. We continue to want to retain our employees. We train them, and we want them to have portable skills. And if they stay with us, that's great. And if they leave, can't help it, but we want them to have what they need to perform in our division and or be ready in our department and or be ready for other opportunities. Trying to continue to focus a lot on supervisory training. HR is going to be providing some of that, a new program this year. We've been doing that with School of Government as well. Sometimes we have promotional opportunities. We want people to have had that supervisory experience to be ready for the next step. This year, we also removed some barriers for hiring in our arborist positions, where some of those positions typically have required a CDL. We said, come on, we'll go send you to CDL training at Alamance Community College, and then you get your certification and you're with us. We had a hard time recruiting some arborists, so we wanted to reduce some barriers. So we have 2 folks that have just completed that, and we're offering it to others, so they'll have it as a affordable skill, but we had to focus on those that required it for their positions to begin with. Another thing that we have done is we sent 5 of our landscaping staff to community college for an arborist training as well, and just to enhance their skills when they're working with our department. And special thank you to their other colleagues that didn't go, that had to help make sure that the work continues. Department internships. The city manager's office has been great to help support and lead an effort to ensure that we have opportunities for interns. We've got 5 interns that will be working with us this year. 2 from Central, 1 from Duke, 1 from Carolina, and 1 who's from Liberty, who actually wants to go to Central Law School. So we've got quite an array of staff persons that are helping us with different short-term projects. We're excited about that. This past year, we were able to host some Durham Public School students under the leadership of Kevin Lilly. In February, we had a job shadow day. We had 18 students that shadowed our team, from getting on roofs, looking at solar, going down to the ballpark, looking at that project, seeing what our HVAC penthouse, y'all know we have a penthouse, looks like in City Hall. So they were able to do so many things. And then that led to a week of the Scholars at Work program during spring break, where we had students from all schools of in Durham come work with us in shadow. And I think it was great for the students, but I will tell you it was really awesome for our team members, because when you get to show the work that you do and you see the pride in that, the day-to-day changes in a different way when you get to talk about the work that you do. And that's what I saw with a lot of our frontline staff. So that was a great program. Grant awards, we're told go pursue anything and everything that makes sense. We're doing it. We don't win them all, but we've gotten some for EV chargers. We'll continue to do that. We also have 2 new funding grants that were born after, with the clean fuel technology, a $5 million grant, and 1 through urban forestry, which is a $6 million grant. Energy audits was Green Source Advantage. Y'all seen our press release recently. We now are on our way for our 35 megawatt solar farm, which is a partnership between us, the county, and Durham Public Schools, that will help us get to our renewable energy goals. Should be online by the end of 2025. Energy audits were funded last year. We'll have the results of that this year, which will then be a roadmap for future improvements, capital or otherwise. Innovative construction applications, we have tested at Durham Bulls Athletic Park, and we're also going to do it at CM Herndon, a sidewalk section, which includes carbon cure. That is a process where, I had to watch a video last night. That is a process where recycled carbon dioxide is mixed into concrete to create a mixture, so that then it will sequester the carbon dioxide in concrete. So we're testing it. It works, that's great, and we'll see what happens. But we want to continue to do things that are innovative, that will help us with our sustainability goals. We also have Green Natural Burial Program and a fuse fellow that is helping us with that in our improvements at Beechwood. After the break, we'll be coming before y'all with some ordinance revisions that will allow us to do that, and other updates about our projects there. Cultural roadmap should be completed by June 2024. Some of you serve on that committee, so we're excited about how that will help us with our future planning. One more slide. Budget highlights. We've been recommended for funding for a physical security specialist. That was one of the recommendations out of our assessment, for our security assessment. Also, contracted security guards, I like to call courtesy officers as well, to manage our weapons detection system, as well as continue to have that, that resource within our City Hall complex, which is our most public building. An RFP will be going out soon for that. We are working with transportation as well as DPR to include security presence for parking garages and whatever DPR needs may be, just to have that as a larger RFP. Security operating funds are for licenses and maintenance. City Hall security improvements include a list of recommendations from a study from replacing cameras or updating cameras, door access, a visitor management system. You may know, many schools now are moving to that where you have a visitor management system. So something that was recommended as a best practice. Thank you, all of you, for the signage project and the convention center project and the symphony project that came from council. We will be advancing those as well. And with that, any questions?
Thank you so much for a great report. Colleagues, I'm not going to yield. Madam Manager, did you want to? Sure. Go ahead.
So as Councilor formulating questions, I did want to say after Public Works and the General Services Department, there was a question earlier about which employees may fall into other pay plans. Many of the employees in the two departments that you just heard from, their employees are in the general step plan. So as we are taking notes and bringing back additional information really quickly, I wanted to say that even though I have an opportunity to make a few remarks at the end of the day, but while they're still here. But
Thank you, Madam Manager. Councilmember Hyman, did you raise your?
No.
Councilmember Williams, and then Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. Just want to say thank you to you and your team. I've gotten a chance to work with Director Lilly. I didn't know trees were so complicated. And I found myself in the middle of the street with residents on both sides of the issue. And just the way the department handled it was just superb, and I really appreciate you guys. I wanted to say that on the record here. You may have mentioned this, but I think I missed it. Do we have organizations or nonprofits that also are helping us like plant trees, or that can align with our missions? Keep Darn Beautiful, is that what they're doing?
Keep Darn Beautiful is one of our strongest partners. They are in our department, so we'd have a great opportunity to partner with them. We also have done some planning before with Trees Durham, which is another nonprofit.
Yeah.
So we do that as well. We focus primarily on planting trees in the public right of way and public property. And then
Awesome.
they have more opportunities in other locations.
Thank you. I just met two other organizations that are excited about lending their time and efforts and also their federal grants that they're applying for to the city. So I'll be in touch after this with you all about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you so much. Thank you for your presentation. I just had a couple of questions. So when we plant trees in the right of way, do we have any follow-up to like try to keep them alive, like make sure they're doing okay?
Yes. We have stepped up our water routes as well when it comes to that. There is going to be typically some amount of potential mortality rate.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are also damaged from things outside of our control, vehicles or people or things of that nature. But we do go back after we've done a planting to see how they did. And then part of our planting may be replanting. It is, I'm glad you brought that up though, that it is an area that we need to continue to work on our maintenance program, especially because we planted all these trees, all these new trees. So when you have assets, you have to maintain them. So they are an asset.
Yeah, okay, great. And if someone notices a problem with one of the trees, is that something you could do one call request
Yes,
for?
please do.
Okay.
We just had a meeting with them yesterday. That'd be a perfect way to make that.
Awesome. And then the greenhouse gas reductions look really great. Could you tell us like what do you think are the primary, like what's primarily responsible for those numbers?
The electrification of our buses has been a big help for that. Solar, not so much. It contributes. Any energy efficiency work that we do in our buildings is another main thing, as well as energy efficiency that we implement at our wastewater treatment plants. Those are big energy hogs.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Caballero.
Could you pull up Could you pull up the last slide? I just didn't want to miss. Thank you. Just thank you for the excellent presentation. Really excited about a lot of the movement, especially about the green source advantage. I mean, that was a lot of work and a big win for our city, county, and schools. And I love that we're all working together. I know that that's also something that has been different than a lot of communities, is everyone working together. I just wanted to shout out the cultural roadmap work and just shout out Annette Smith. She's doing a fantastic job. I also sit in that group, and it's just been really amazing to see all of the good work that's already progressing there. And then with trees, really quickly, I know folks have to do kind of like street tree replacement. That is something that's asked when we are, you know, if you take one down, you got to put one back for private development. But it doesn't. Can you do a little bit like explain? It doesn't necessarily have to be the type of tree that would have provided as much shade as before, because the list includes trees that maybe are smaller, right? And so just wondering about, is there going to be any more discussion on, you know, you kind of have to replace what was, not when it's originally planted, obviously, but where it would have gone eventually at full growth.
That's something we can discuss with the planning department.
Okay.
Who would be responsible for those guidelines, and they do their review as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, and I appreciate my colleague back there, a lot of questions. I did want to track back to the vacancies and just ask if you're noticing that they're localized in a specific area, or if it's just spread out across the department.
It's spread out. We've got 3 custodial openings right now, but we have a lot of people that have applied for that. One was someone who went to another department, and one was someone who wanted a part-time person with the DPR. So we have a great pool of.
I will let you know that.
The high five, or, you know. So we've got a great pool, so we're trying to do interviews to fill all 3 and create a registry. So we do everything we can creatively when these unusual things occur.
Yeah, I will let you know that last night it was interesting, the county commissioners talking about, you know, swapping county managers. They were all taking them from someplace else. So I think everyone's getting a little bit of that going.
Right.
I did want to also just track back and say I appreciate, I think it's a great way to retain current staff by getting them trained up, and, you know, getting your landscaping team in for arborist training is a great opportunity to kind of step up. And I wanted to ask specifically on the trees that have already been planted, kind of going back to how we're maintaining the trees that are there before they fall down. And then also, I'm not sure if you call it trees, but the branches that are always in the sidewalk or the right of way, especially for like more forested areas. I don't know who maintains that.
So inspections, going back to trees, we do have an inspection program where we do monitor what has been planted. Now, things can occur in between when we did our inspection and something else. So we shout out, anybody has an issue, please do report it to One Call. Will help us respond to that. As far as other landscaping impediments, if it is a city right of way, if it's a DOT, that those things will come into play as well. But we have responsibility for maintaining rights of ways that are city.
And I think that's probably the question, is to try to understand or help other people understand whether it's city or not. And I don't know if we have signage that says that, because there are some areas that I know are probably private and NIS would, you know, cite. But for those areas that are more like, I won't say abandoned, but they're just not maintained. And primarily, I'm thinking about Carver Street, so I've had a chance to be up and down that road a lot. And I'm noticing a lot more folks riding their mobile or motorized wheelchairs in the bike lane because the sidewalk branches are like all in your way. So I'm just trying to think out loud and thinking what that would look like to document. And then to kind of get through a process, so letting folks know to contact during One Call, and then it'll come out through the other side.
We actually have an intern that's going to be working with us on some of our mapping, so that would be a great way to help identify those locations. But if it's an area where there's a sidewalk, most likely it's us, and if there's a tree impediment, or something else, then help us, we would ask people to help us identify those things as we try to self-identify as well.
Thank you, that was all.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Williams.
I just want to say I learned so much when I was out on Oakland and other places. I'm an uncertified arborist, so if you have any questions, just let me know. I can tell you all about it. I did not know it was so complicated. But that's why I said uncertified. Thank you all.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, anyone else? Jina, thank you so much for a really great presentation. I do have a couple quick questions and then one comment. With respect to our cemeteries, how far out are we before we, I hope you say 100 years, before we need to start talking about land acquisition for another city cemetery? Where are we in terms of our capacity?
So we have plenty of capacity at Maplewood. We have active projects at Beechwood right now. We have a columbarium garden that's underway. We have a land clearing that will create 50 to 60 lots. And then we have a construction contract recently approved for another 390. That in addition to offering a columbarium garden, if folks would like to have cremains as opposed to a traditional burial. We're trying to have as many options in order to be very sustainable in how we use the rest of the current land that we have at Beechwood. That was the one that was in more constraints because it's only like 25 acres versus Maplewood's 125. So we expect that the 390, I don't want to give you a number of how long the 390 will get us. I could follow back up, except to say, as we also see what people's burial practices are may influence how long our space will last.
You know, I surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, I've got a few questions from residents on that. To be sure, we are in no rush to use these spaces. So we want our residents around for a long time. So hopefully this is something we can kick down the road. This department is probably one of the most impactful and least known departments. It's kind of,
We like to be unknown.
yeah.
Director Williams just said, we prefer, but thank you for that.
No, but you do a lot of important things. And I learned a lot. A lot of our resident citizens don't realize some of the things you have your hands in. I did also want to ask about the how do we evaluate, and I'm glad they're keep Durham beautiful, but you got a evaluation box. And what kind of do we do it? Do they turn in hours sheets? How do we place a value on what they do for us?
It's a national standard that's through Keep America Beautiful. It goes up annually,
Gotcha.
typically.
So at the local level, do we, because it says volunteer hours, who keeps track of those hours? Do they?
Keep Durham Beautiful does with our volunteer coordinator.
Gotcha.
And I think we've got some fancy software to do that.
Gotcha. All right. And finally, I want to say, someone on a personal note, I want to thank you for the work that you're doing and considering in terms of building security and physical security. There are a number of, I'm always surprised at the number of my colleagues around the country when I travel and talk about what's going on in the city, who are surprised that our mayor does not have a security detail. We don't ride around in dark sedans with blue lights. We don't have cops following us. We be outside. We want to keep a balance of not turning City Hall into an armed fortress. We want it to be welcoming and inviting to our people. And it's hard work to strike that balance between keeping folks safe. As much as our colleagues may have spirited debates, we all want to go home. We all want each other to go home. I have had some uncomfortable and scary things communicated. I'm sure my colleagues have as well communicated to me over the years. So I know there are some people that struggle with knowing the line between where public ends and private starts. Very few cases, but they are out there and we know the reality. So I just want to thank you. And I know that your team and the manager is approaching this situation with a great deal of sensitivity because we are Durham and Durham doesn't have armed camps. We don't want folk feeling like they've got to go through layers to get to us. On the same token, this is a public building, it's a target for many folk, and the work of keeping not just us who sit up here, but all of our employees, and our residents and neighbors who visit the building to conduct their business, whether they're paying their water bill or going to see the clerk to get some papers. We all want them to be safe. And so I just want to thank you for the work and the responsiveness you've had. Some of the things that have happened, and folk, they'll never make the news, but some things that have had to direct our attention towards this matter. I'm as a person, I'm extremely grateful. As a person who loves this job and doesn't want to die for it, the work that you're doing to secure this building and all of us who work here. So as you bring back recommendations and implement things, just know that we understand how tough it is to strike that balance between keeping folks safe, but also keeping Durham, which is open and accessible and neighborly to all people. So thank you so much for that. Appreciate it.
If I may, thank y'all. It's a privilege to be able to share out the work of our department. And also, I'd like to thank, our city manager and deputy city managers. They challenge us every day. They support us, and we're very fortunate to have them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, colleagues, our final presentation, we're doing really good on time, comes from a great department and one of my favorite TV shows, Parks and Rec. So we'll, at this time, yield to Wade Walcutt for Parks and Recreation. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, Madam Manager. At Parks and Recreation, as you know, we can help connect the whole community to the outdoors, wellness, and lifelong learning, and encourage you to play more. And simply put, we help build better lives and a better community through the power of Parks and Recreation. Some of the information that you're going to see here today was put together by some of our team members that are with us today. I'd like to recognize Joy Guy, Rich Hahn, and Dawson. And as you'll see here for our overall org chart, not a whole lot of changes from years past. One thing that is different that you may have heard about is the creation of the Citywide Special Events Office, where we just completed a hiring of that office. So we have 5 team members focused on improving the customer experience of our events that we have in Durham, but also to attract new and community building events to Durham. So we're really excited about that as well. We're also lucky and grateful to say we haven't had a big list of full-time vacancies. We've been doing really well on a full-time basis, regardless of the type of position it is. The part-time positions, as you may guess, of lifeguards and childcare support continues to be a challenge. Each year we do a little bit better. One of the things that helped us out a lot this year, well, 2 things really. We have a partnership, thanks to the manager, the mayor, also the county manager, and the school board. We started talking and thinking early, how can we combine our efforts and collaborate to make sure there's enough programs for youth and teens, regardless of what jurisdiction it is and who's doing it. So as we work together, we created different opportunities. We did really cross-marketing promotion of our opportunities, but we also invited the school board to come to our job fairs because we didn't want to have to compete, but we just want to make sure there's enough opportunities and there's enough awareness out there in the community that there's a great place for youth and teens to go. And as a result of that, our free teen program, My Durham, we've got that fully staffed, and we've got a great participation registration there. And we've been doing better with hiring summer camp staff this year too. So all of that is good news and trending in the right direction. And a lot of it was thanks to the cooperation we've had with the county and schools. Some of the performance measures that resulted from the resident survey, you can see mostly recreation programs and opportunities. Again, that's credit to this partnership of the county and the schools to get more kids involved in our camps. Like I said, My Durham is going really well as well. So those have been trending very good. We've also seen a big jump since probably the pandemic in terms of passive use of our parks and our facilities and people just wanting to be outdoors. And so you can see we've had a big increase in people wanting to reserve spaces and shelters. And I think part of that is also because of the efforts our team have put forth in improving the parks and the quality and the appearances of everything. We've had a lot more projects going on. And so some of that is the reason we pull people that mow the parks off to help out with construction projects or improvement projects in the park. So some of those numbers slip every once in a while with our mowing rates. As far as our resources go, we have essentially a pretty flat budget. The biggest increase you'll see is capital and other. That biggest jump really is representative of around $100,000 being put toward the operations of the wheels, the roller rink. And so that's in our budget, prepared for that. Some of the highlights that we're excited about, as you know, the roller skating rink operation is moving forward. The design improvements are on track with all the things that need to happen there. We've been working with the vendor who we're negotiating a contract with to operate the skating rink. They've provided some ideas as well to the architects and designers of how can we design and upfit this the best way to make it enjoyable for everyone. That contract will be coming to you in the new fiscal year, so we'll have all those details on that. Again, we're very excited about the special events office that we've put together. And some of the park projects and how we do some of our half penny maintenance funds, we're really excited about. And it all plays together with our centennial. So next year will be 100 years old. And we're looking for a year-long campaign of celebration about what parks means to the city of Durham and our residents, and celebrating this 100 years. We've got a lot of cool projects that are coming up. You know a lot about the Wheels project, but one thing we're also excited about is the amount of private investment we've been able to receive in grants. Nearly $1 million this year in private investment grants to go toward different park projects. So we use that money to leverage city dollars. CR Wood Park is an example where over the next couple of years that will be completely transformed with new restrooms, accessible pathways, playgrounds. And that's really been the focus of our department the last couple of years, is inclusivity in terms of accessibility. So our playgrounds, the designs of our parks, how are we designing them differently to be more accessible for people of all abilities? If you want to take a look at that most recent example, please go out to Merrickmore Park. We just added our brand new playground out there with a nice pour and play surface. It's much easier to get around regardless of your mobility. But we also installed sunshades to keep people in the shade. But in and around that playground, we designed in-house and built a sensory garden. So for folks that of all abilities and might have sensory issues, they can go and experience this park, and there's something for everybody there. We're also going through and getting ready to launch our engagement process for our comprehensive park system plan. So as we're celebrating 100 years, we're starting to plan for the next 15 plus years. And we know that Durham is growing. So we want to make sure that are we matching our facilities, our trails, our parks, our programs, our green spaces, keeping pace with the growth of our community. We're very grateful, as you saw earlier, a lot of the CIP projects and the Equitable and Green Infrastructure projects that are coming to parks. These are projects that the community has been asking for quite some time, and we're really excited to get those out and rolling. And I think we'll see over the next 5 years or less some major transformations in our parks in terms of accessibility and quality, and really just the beautification of our parks. So there's a lot of great things on the horizon. We're grateful for the manager's office support and this body's support as well, and a lot of the partnerships that we have out there. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Wade. Good to see you. Colleagues, questions or comments? Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. The question I always get is, when will the pools be open?
Oh yeah, thank you. The pools are scheduled to open June 7th. Spray grounds, we're going to make that press release today. This year we will not be able to open Long Meadow Pool. We had routine inspections, and because it's 60 years plus, and we've been talking about this quite some time, it's not a surprise. However, it's just unfortunate that it finally occurred. So we're taking a look at that pool. We're assessing what the investment need is and see how we can fix it and if it can be done and opened up again next year. However, it won't be open this year.
I will say that I appreciate Deputy Manager Keith Chatwell really going deep with the community, folks who were really outraged about that pool being closed last year and the year before. But the explanation.
That pool's open.
The explanation that the pool had flooded was very helpful. I think just making sure folks understand what's going on is really helpful and key to making sure that there's not that kind of pushback. And I will say that I appreciate you making sure to attend a couple of those meetings as well, noting that this is an ongoing process in this comprehensive park system assessment. I'm gonna ask if you're considering kind of assessing how many of the parks or parks surrounding areas have flooding issues. And noting that that's a real resilience issue, and as we're going forward with the green and equitable infrastructure, is going to be key to have that type of information available on the front side of it. So I will ask if that would be included in your comprehensive.
Sure thing, we'll do, and
study.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's the case of parks throughout the country. When land is divvied up, they're like, oh, we're gonna do neighborhoods here and develop here, and then what's left? Oh, we've got this drainage and open space and floodway, let's do a park. So yeah, definitely do that, and I think it's a great point to bring that to the forefront from the very beginning.
Colleagues, Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you for the great presentation. I'm excited about all the work. I just wanted to shout out some of the staff. I think Councilmember Freeman, the mayor, and I all participated in the DOS tour, which was fantastic, and thanks to Tom Dawson for doing a great job being our tour guide, essentially. And then just really quick, there are lots of my kids' friends who are going to be lifeguarding for the city, so it is also a really good opportunity for the youth to make some good money for 16 and 17-year-olds, and I am pushing the 14-year-old in that direction, so we'll see if the other two did not take me up on these things.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, what else? Wade, thank you so much. I want to thank you and your entire team. Firstly, with the work on wheels and bringing it back online. Community asked, we get it, said yes, and you're doing the work. And you need to hear that we see the work being done, and we are all excited about wheels being brought back online with deliberate speed. You know, when we talk about the kind of things that are root cause kind of interventions and things that we can do to save our kids' lives, Parks and Rec, it's not going to be the police department, it's going to be Parks and Rec. It's Parks and Rec that saved my life as a young person in the inner cities of this country, was having things to do that kept me from doing other things. So I'm deeply appreciative of the work that goes on with your department. I'm going to invite you to speculate. So you didn't do this proactively. So I want the record to reflect, I'm asking you to opine on this. How long do you think we can go with that half penny before it needs to be a full penny? And I'm inviting you. So I understand you are not proactively, Madam Manager, he didn't bring this up. I'm asking him.
Here's the line. We've got more work than a half penny allows right now. Our challenge through all these projects, and you heard earlier, even with the regardless of fund, Equitable and Green and CIP half penny, we've got more projects. So if it was a great campaign slogan, in my opinion, would be my 2 cents for the half penny is we have a lot of deferred maintenance, and we have a lot of, but it's the people power that we need, and I think that's why you saw some consideration, Equitable Green for $100,000 in project management, is to help with that scope and help with that capacity. So yes, we're going to be 100 years old. We have a very aging infrastructure, as we know. The need for an additional money in a half penny is warranted based on the number of projects. It would just be the biggest challenge of having the capacity to get all those done as quick as we can.
All right, thank you. Colleagues, anyone else? Thank you so much.
Just look forward to seeing everybody June 3rd. Been back.
Oh, yeah.
Try and keep us away.
Yeah.
Yes, y'all. Thank you so much. Colleagues, that brings us to the end of some really great and robust and substantive presentations. We're doing really good on time. And this time now, we're going to have opportunity for any council members to reflect on what we've heard today, any comments. So the floor is open. Around the table. Councilmember Caballero, please.
Just very quickly want to thank all staff for their excellent presentations and for the incredible work. I look forward to passing this budget at the end of June and for all the wonderful things we're going to be providing residents.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, Councilmember Williams.
I too want to thank staff and from the very top, manager Page, to everyone for not just having your head in the sand and just doing your job, but also being conscious of what's being said in the community, what's being said within our staffing ranks, and also listening to us, getting your nerves, and trying to communicate what we hear in the community. You know, making a sacrifice to run for office means you also make a sacrifice to be that one to learn and understand all of the complexities of a municipality. And so thank you all for your patience and also just allowing us to rely on you, your expertise. And I think it's magical where you guys take all of these complex perspectives and you put it into this product right here. Lastly, I'll just say it's very, very, very important for the community at large to tune in, attend, pay attention, ask us questions as your council members. And because we're required and obligated to give you fact. I know that there are a lot of narrative hijackers out there. I know there are a lot of folks that like to be a university of opinion and provide that information for you and then get you in an uproar. The best thing you can do is engage with your local officials, and we will communicate and translate and transfer information to staff on your behalf. So thank you all.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. Just want to echo everyone's thanks for staff for these very thoughtful presentations. I always really enjoy this part of our budget process where we get to dig a little bit deeper into all the things that are going on in our departments. This is a really great budget. It's really exciting to see some of the benefits that we're seeing from growth, the additional funding and the property and the sales tax going back into our community and making sure that we can, use that money to improve the lives of the folks who really need it. So it's good to see these sorts of investments and looking forward to tomorrow and the rest of the season. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Hyman, please.
I again want to echo everyone. I just want to say thank you for not only your presentations, but your innovative presentation to creativity and just your passion for the work. And I continue to learn every time you present. So I want to say thank you again.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. Of course, I would echo the thanks. I am looking forward to tomorrow's presentations as well. I think that there's a lot of pieces of this that folks don't understand, and I really appreciate staff taking the time to just really slow it down and parse it out so that folks know that we're doing the work and that things are happening. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues, for some great comments. Of course, I want to associate myself with everything my colleagues have said, and thank you for the incredible work that you've done to all of our department heads, the ones today and the ones that will be coming tomorrow. I guess by way of comment, then I yield to our manager as we're at the bottom of the hour. I didn't say it earlier when Christina Riordan was presenting, but this has been a celebratory and bittersweet process, this particular budget. When you're a servant knows that the mission is greater than the person. Servants always recognize that the mission has to go forward. The organization is bigger than you, but it still hurts when you lose one. And you have to mourn them, but continue the work. And my suspicion is that John and Laura would be incredibly proud of the servants that continue to do the work, that even as we mourn, we pick up the flag and continue going forward. I tell my employees and my team all the time that the greatest measure of the health of an organization is taken when the leader's not there, not when they're there. How do they function? How do they behave when the top seat is not filled by the person that's normally filling it? When they're away, do we still go forward? And this organization has behaved magnificently in the loss of a great leader. And like all great organizations, other leaders stepped forward immediately and picked up the flag. So while I know this is a bittersweet moment, there is much to celebrate as well. This is a good editorial on the health of our organization. It is a testament to the work that John did and the folk around him do. And we should be proud. Even as we mourn, we should be smiling that this work is going forward, that this organization is healthy. And I think the best way to honor his memory is to finish and pass this historic budget. And this is an historic budget that we have before us. So thank you all so much for a great day. We'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning. At this time, before we gavel out, I'm going to yield to the manager for any final comments she may have for the day. Madam Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, council members, for your input, for the time that you've spent with us today. As we continue to listen, as we continue to progress in this budget season, we have another public hearing that's coming up on Monday, June 5th. So I wanted to make sure everyone knows that. I would also like to make sure that our residents know that when you email us, when you call us, when you see us, and want to tell us something about what we do and how we do it, we do listen. We are listening to you. We love ideas. We know that we do not have them all, even though we have some great leaders who are always present. You see them everywhere. Bertha, Keith, Bo, Carnisha, who are here today. We are here to serve. We're here to serve the residents, to the investments that you make. While they're not all volunteer investments, they are investments that help us deliver services to this community. And we are proud public servants. We're proud to do this work. And I look forward to additional departmental meetings tomorrow. As you know, it is not all of our departments, but all of our departments are represented in our budget draft. So I invite you to go to the budget department's webpage and look at the total budget that we have available for your review as we move toward budget adoption. So again, thank you, and I look forward to tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Madam Manager. Madam Clerk, the gavel is down at 12:35.